Let us pray, Masitandaze. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interest of our people. On machtige God, ons bid dat u gedrende ons vergadrings. Ons dienodege wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou. En dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelela Nkosi ilizwe lethu nabantu balo. Umisele ukulunga Nkosi kwiphondo lethu. Nkosi sikelela iAfrika. Gcina abantwana bayo. Khokhela Nkosi inkokheli zayo. Yinike uxolo Nkosi iAfrika. All this we beg in your most holy name. Amen. You may all be seated. Thank you. Honorable members, I welcome the Premier who is sitting in the house with me here in the chamber today, and also the Honorable Mackenzie, who is also joining me here in the chamber. And of course, I welcome all the honorable members who are all connected either in your homes or in your offices through the virtual platform. I welcome the members of the Fourth Estate, the media, and of course, thank you for your interest in the work that we do as the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. I just want to remind the honorable members that we do not have a pronounced or a scheduled load shedding. That then confirms that members will be consistently connected. It's up to the honorable members where they connected to ensure that they are reasonably stable in terms of the connectivity. I wish to remind the honorable members that you may not speak during the sitting unless you are recognized by the presiding officer. And of course, I would also add and say that the honorable members who wish to raise a point of order may do so by means of indicating your hand and using your hand raising button in your device, or by doing so through the chat room. The presiding officer will recognize you. I also wish to indicate to the members of the media that please do not attempt to activate your camera nor your microphone. Your presence here is through the means of being in the gallery, as we usually do so here in the House, in the Provincial Parliament. So at this point, the program is fairly straightforward today in terms of our order paper. We do not have a debate, and therefore we've got interpellations, questions, and the questions to the Premier who is present here in the House, and of course member statements and the notices of motions and motions. I would like at this point to deal with the first matter, and that is the interpellations. The first interpellation is by the Honorable Van Vogel to the Minister of Health, Dr. Mbombo. I now recognize the Minister. Ngubane.
Good afternoon. Can you just confirm, Speaker, whether I'm audible and also probably I'm visible.
Excuse me, Honorable Minister, what you request the presiding officer to do?
Just to check whether you can hear me. I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's clear. It's like you are in a street committee meeting.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you for the interpellation from Member Van Vogel in regard to the queues. Yes, there are long queues, and also we are very much aware of the Disaster Management Act regulations in regard to the gatherings and also social distancing. So therefore, in as much as that we are having so much pressure in regard to the resources, but we are to ensure that using the interns, not medical interns, the interns, using the EPWP staff, in some instances contract staff as queue marshals, and in some instances community workers, and in some instances volunteers from the clinic committees to be able to assist on the queues that are outside. Also, Speaker, take into consideration that our health facilities, especially those old ones, we find that they've been built a long time ago where they don't make a provision even for like an AFDAC in some cases, or even the places where people could be able to sit outside the facility. Unfortunately, in as much as that we understand that people are sick, they are vulnerable, when they come to the facilities, we are unable to bring inside many people, because not only about it's high risk among each other if you don't keep the social distance in a closed environment like in the waiting room, but also it does also expose staff also to the infection. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Speaker. Good afternoon, honorable members. Speaker, as at 11 of August 2021, the Western Cape had 430,921 total cumulative cases, following a reported 1,703 new COVID-19 cases. So the Western Cape has reclaimed its spot as the COVID-19 epicenter. This is the case partly because COVID-19 fatigue has set in, and we let our guard down as the people by not respecting and adhering to the safety protocols. But in the main, it is the clearing capacity gaps in government and sometimes the bad decisions. These include the senseless testing strategy that exclude majority of population. And despite there being clear evidence of younger people being most at risk of contracting the Delta variant, it was this government that sabotaged national government's plans for depopulation of overcrowded communities, especially in informal settlements where physical distancing is nearly impossible, and with water and sanitation challenges which increase the risk of the spread of the virus. Instead of addressing the challenges of overcrowding in informal settlement, this government has opted to stop building people's decent houses. It will now teach people to build decent shacks through the better living challenges. The biggest area of concern is that our community clinics are at risk of becoming super spreaders. As the province has 35,344 COVID-19 active cases, a number of these patients and their families frequent our community clinics, where thousands of people stand on long queues outside clinics for long hours, waiting for the facility to open every day. There's no one to ensure that the people adhere to COVID-19 safety protocols, particularly maintaining physical distancing between patients and between patients and wearing of masks. The risk for the spread of COVID-19 in community clinic is very high under these conditions. It is for this reason we are asking the MEC to tell us what additional measures are put in place to curb the spread of COVID-19 outside these facilities. What engagement has the MEC held with the city to prevent our clinics from becoming COVID-19 super spreaders? I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable members, I now recognize the chairperson of the committee, Honorable Philander.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, the key to consistent and coordinated response is effective communication to achieve the ultimate patient experience at public health facilities. Speaker, through you, can the Minister please share with the House how COVID-19 has exacerbated queues and the waiting periods, how the measures, or what was the measures that was undertaken by the department to improve communication with patients to rule out these difficulties? Speaker, through you also, have patients been denied access to care due to these queues? And does the department have incident management teams that monitor the influx of patients at health facilities as they are reported and then subsequently addressed by the department and by the necessary facility? Speaker, also, are these existing agreements in place with the department? Are there existing agreements in place with the Department of Community Safety? The Minister has made mention of interns, EPWPs, and all those volunteers and so forth that do assist at these facilities. Are there also agreements in place with local authorities to help the Department of Health in instances where these queues does exist? Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Philander. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, what the ACTP would like to know is, especially when it comes to the long queues, what measures has the department put in place to at least assist the elderly and also those mothers who attend with their babies, taking into account, that as we talking about the spreading of the virus and combating that, where there is long lines, and I think member Philander said it, is there measures in place if the queue is extremely long and it's a danger to the people spreading the virus? Is there plans in place to look at those things? The important thing is, I've heard before that, elderly people need to queue long hours to get to be assisted. So what do they do if they get there and they are elderly? Do they report to somebody? Do they go in front of the queue to say, I'm 80 years old, 70 years old, or what the case may be? Or if a mother comes with quite a number of children that nobody can look after the children and sees in the queue. I'm just worried about that. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Van Vogel again.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, facility management in almost all our community clinics are aware of the risk of COVID-19 spread in our facilities. And many have come up with measures, as mentioned by the MEC, to control the flow of patients inside facilities. For example, there's clinics that keep patients waiting outside facilities and only admit 10 patients per time to get services, and only admits the other 10 when there's space inside. While this approach makes sense, the only challenge is that the frustrated patients outside the long queues are kept there for long hours and they don't adhere to safe safety protocols. We have raised this challenge with some facility managers of management who admitted that it is indeed a challenge and that their hands are tied as they don't have capacity to recruit more staff to control the queues, and that some of these volunteers are not always available. They say community volunteers, as mentioned, only attend when they feel like it, and that please, and that please for the city of Cape Town and provincial government to build waiting areas outside clinics. And there's an urgent need for the provincial government to urgently put measures in place to prevent our clinics from becoming a COVID-19 super spreader, including by deploying perhaps neighborhood watchers to control the queues outside facilities from early morning hours. And so the MEC must tell us why the application by many clinics, including Nolungilo Clinic in Site C, for a waiting area outside the facility have not been implemented. It's been years since the management asked for the building of a waiting area to assist patients while waiting outside before the opening hours. This will go a long way in improving the service and to make it possible for people to maintain physical distancing. The MEC must tell us what work has been done to build the waiting areas outside our clinics and where the hold-up is, as many clinics have been ignored when they apply for these waiting areas. The blame game between city, provincial government and national is not going to provide solutions. The MEC must tell us how her department is going to solve these issues. I thank you, Chair. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you for the input from the colleagues. One, the reasons that we de-escalated the services as according to the pandemic in regard to the numbers is just one of the contribution on how to stop the spread. So the non-COVID cases, as we normally suggest, say that they are not on holiday, but unfortunately, you don't want a situation where you ended up infecting patients within our facilities. So that's why we are strict. Well, some people say that it is rainy, please bring the people inside, but we can't. If you go to the waiting rooms, you will find that there will be a chair, especially those ones that are a bunk, that are longer, where there will be a chair and the other one will have an X where that you don't sit. Just like as the member has indicated, in some areas where they will say we take 10 inside, and then we have others that are outside in the yard, and then we have got others that are outside the yard. The 1.5 meters is the one we take it very seriously because you cannot be infected and get COVID from within the area that is supposed to protect you. So that part of it, we are very strict. The issue here is about the queues that are happening outside the yard specifically, which is actually, it's a jurisdiction also of the municipality in some cases, because those patients will be actually waiting in the other areas, for example, whether it's a pavement by the municipality and all of those. However, we take responsibility because those patients are coming to us. Now, if you compare the resources, you find that you want to channel to balance the scale, but at the same time, you need resources for specialists in the COVID wards, for more healthcare workers in the wards, and all others, not only in terms of the human resources, plus also in regard to the equipment and all of those. So that's why we have to balance. You cannot just appoint as many of the queue marshals and then vis-a-vis for the others. Hence, as I always say, that a clinic is owned by the communities. For us as health is about to ensure that we deliver the health services. Health services is our business, is our core business, but health is everyone's business. So that's why in other areas, the ward councillors will even assist, even drawing the lines around that part. But as health, not only the de-escalation and also to decongregate, but also to have an appointment system so that for those ones who have got cold cases, they could be able to wait. It's not an emergency. They could come at the time that they don't have to wait. We distribute medicines throughout so that people don't have to come unnecessarily also to the facilities. In regard to the prioritization for the vulnerable, it has always been before, even prior COVID, where the older persons, those with their newborns, with the babies, those children who are wearing school uniform, those who have got severe disability, they will always be prioritized. So the responsibility of the queue marshals or EPW, whoever is there, is not only about to ensuring the 1.5 meter distance that needs to be maintained, but also to triage in regard to which person is seen to be more vulnerable or more sicker than the rest, so that those people could be able to jump the queue. Again, this is a manifestation of what is happening outside, not only in the health system, because we've got queues, whether it's during the SASSA grants, we've got queues in the ATMs, we've got queues at the shops, we've got queues even everywhere, grocery stores, they'll always be there at the bank and whatever, all of those. But how do we, as a society, take each and everyone's responsibility? Because Member Van Vogel speaks about City of Cape Town. We've got queues everywhere. Go to TC Newman, go to Paarl or whatever hospital, go to Bito, there'll always be queues because we have to maintain the stop of the spread that could happen inside the facilities to protect the healthcare workers, but also to protect the persons themselves. Thank you, Speaker. I think I've covered all of those.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Sorry, Speaker, just last, the other question that Member Philanda asked. We haven't seen any infections within. It's mostly the gatherings like funerals. Thank you, Speaker.
You don't do it that way. Remember, you exhausted your time, so I was a bit also, accommodating. But next time, don't worry. May I just indicate to the House that the current interpellation has now been concluded, and now we move to the next interpellation, and that is by the Honourable Bartman to the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Opportunities. I now recognize the Honourable Minister, Minister Menia.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm going to keep my camera off in the interest of preserving my connectivity, which has been a little bit shaky this morning. Speaker, businesses in the Western Cape are, of course, already hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, and then add to this an electricity crisis. And this is certainly the final blow for many businesses who are already facing closure. And of course, this risks resulting in further job losses in the Western Cape. As I've said before, it's almost as though the COVID-19 pandemic is a left hook and load shedding a right hook, which together have been a knockout blow, unfortunately, for many businesses in the Western Cape, which of course comes at great cost to the economy, and which is why we are doing everything we can with municipalities and businesses and households across the province to invest in growing the renewable energy sector to beat load shedding in the Western Cape. We, of course, are building on excellent work done in the past and the previous term, but central to our energy resilience strategy now is our Municipal Energy Resilience Initiative, which is aimed at assisting municipalities to take advantage of the new energy regulations, which include the potential for municipalities to purchase energy directly from independent power producers. The Municipal Energy Resilience Initiative is not just about municipal procurement from independent power producers, but is also aimed at enabling businesses and households to generate, procure, and of course sell electricity through contributing to an increasingly decentralized system of low carbon energy generation and distribution that will help mitigate the risk in load shedding. The initiative, of course, is aimed at enhancing competitiveness, confidence, investment, economic growth and job creation, all the while contributing to climate change mitigation in the Western Cape. Of course, to achieve this, we have allocated 48.8 million rand over the medium term and provided a further 20 million rand in the provincial reserves for the Municipal Energy Resilience Initiative. We have announced the 6 candidate municipalities, and we are collaborating with the City of Cape Town in the Municipal Energy Resilience Initiative. The initiative, of course, has been rolled out in 3 phases. Phase 1 is to identify the candidate municipalities and, of course, to complete business cases for applicable energy technologies. And we've successfully concluded a request for information to help to identify options available and to develop a strategic approach and roadmap to roll out pioneering renewable energy projects. Phase 2 obviously focuses on the preparation of the pioneering renewable energy projects, and Phase 3 will see the implementation of the pioneering renewable energy projects, as well as developing a master plan for renewable energy projects to be rolled out in candidate municipalities. Of course, by creating a situation where municipalities can sustainably support new generation capacity onto their municipal networks will, of course, assist in buffering the impact of load shedding and setting a path towards greater energy security and affordability in the Western Cape. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I now recognize the Chair of the Committee, Honorable Bartman.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I brought forth today this particular interpellation on the province's pledge to become the first province to beat load shedding, because it is important for the people of the Western Cape to be able to hold its government accountable. At the time of submission, however, no one could have anticipated Eskom's announcement of an explosion at Medupi Power Station at Unit 4, which resulted in Unit 5 also tripping, which has caused a major concern for all South Africans. This comes directly after a very grandiose announcement by Eskom that all the units at the Medupi Power Station were finally coming on stream, 14 years late and vastly over budget. It is reported that repairs could cost 2 billion rand, 2 years to fix, will take 797 megawatts off the system and could push blackouts to record levels. This event will naturally have a devastating effect on our country and our province. Hairdressers need power. Butchers need power. Entrepreneurs need power. Farmers need power. Restaurants need power. Walking home and 2 week, our women need power. Minister Maney, in light of this, the various programs by the Western Cape government to mitigate against the inevitable blackouts is critical not only for the safety and dignity of our people, but also the economic recovery of our province. Minister, in particular, please could you expand on the ways in which these renewable green energy projects you've spoken about can protect our economy? Speaker, I thank you.
We got the power.
Order, honorable members. Who is that?
Member Maran.
That does that. I've been encouraging honorable members to respect the rules of the House, and I think it's about time that I display some firmness in this regard. But I'm just requesting the honorable members to restrain themselves and really follow the example of the rest of the honorable members in the House. May I request now the honorable member Kondlo to address the House.
Somlomo, the ANC welcomes the debate to receive progress report on the efforts and budgets approved by this House during the budget vote in March of Honorable Mainir. It is rather unfortunate to still listen after we have made a follow-up with a parliamentary question. We received very scanty response from the MEC regarding this matter, because we had detailed questions about the allocation of the 70 million, how this money is going to be spent, what has come out from those council of the municipalities that we identified, only to our surprise to be told that the municipalities are still to be identified. Again, if one considers what is in the departmental website about phase 1, which is supposed to be concluded by next month with a clear business case, a municipality and project identification, feasibility studies and roadmaps, which I hope if we make parliamentary questions to MEC, we will be able to receive these documents. The strategic dimensions of the MER project include energy security, energy affordability, environmental sustainability and economic development and growth. We remain highly concerned on these critical objectives and outcomes if one considers the current capacity and misdemeanors in some of these municipalities regarding their electricity sourcing and purchase practices just with Eskom, and one wonders how it will be with IPPs as private providers. Energy affordability is one of the drivers. There is an ongoing outcry around tariff structures and costs regulated by NERSA and what subsequently is paid by the end user. In the city, as we speak, there's been complaints raised of an additional 29 cents charged by city on the NERSA tariff, which is referred to as an unregulated portion, making its electricity cost per unit expensive. Further, the city introduced a debt recovery method to deduct a percentage from the cost per unit and amount for those that owe the municipal rates. Thus, end users get less units vis-a-vis the amount they paid for. In Saldanha, the municipality backtracked on its decision.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Nkondlo. Honorable members, I now request the Honorable Makamba Boja to address the House.
Thank you, Speaker. Whilst it goes without saying that load shedding continues to have devastating effects on the lives of ordinary citizens, the economy of the country and the business at large, if it is not to continue over a long period of time without any positive intervention, then the situation in the country will be very dire. Equally so, the solutions to the long-standing problem associated with load shedding should not only be aimed at keeping the lights on, but also offer affordable energy options to our people, particularly the poor. The recent electricity tariff hikes by the City of Cape Town remains unaffordable for the majority of our poor people. And although the understanding is that under the Municipal Energy Resilience Project, municipalities will be generating, procuring and selling their own power, this electricity should be made affordable for the poor of our people. So since the municipalities will be procuring power from independent power producers who will be setting their own prices since they are running a business, how will these municipalities make sure that the electricity tariffs becomes affordable for our people? And lastly, Chairperson Somlom, secondly, since the provincial government will be assisting municipal financial to participate in the initial phases of the MER projects, are there any feasibility studies conducted to see if most of these municipalities will be able to sustain themselves in taking this project forward over a long-term period? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Makamba Boja. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the first question to the Minister is, when will the Western Cape see an end to load shedding? That is one of the promises made. I'm encouraged by the progress report, but the people want to know, when is the Western Cape not going to rely on Eskom and be independent from Eskom and not affected by load shedding? We know, as said previously, that especially our small businesses are suffering when there's load shedding. They cannot afford generators, and that they're in dire need. Also now facing, maybe just another question is, these independent power producers, are there going to be restrictions? Are they going to be monitored? Or are the poor going to suffer and pay more for electricity? As Member Nkondlo said, now when they go to buy power, their rates get deducted. They get little units out, and people are struggling. So are the municipalities or the department going to make sure that independent power producers do not rip out people? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable members, I now call on the Honorable the Chairperson of the committee.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Minister, one of the projects hailed to move forward the Western Cape becoming the first province in South Africa to beat load shedding is the Municipal Energy Resilience Project. And Speaker, some of the previous members asked for the names of the municipality, and despite these previously being released, let me assist these members. The municipalities are Drakensberg Municipality, Mossel Bay Municipality, Overstrand, Saldanha Bay, Swartland, and this is supported also with the inclusion of the city of Cape Town. The previous members wanted to know about how much is being allocated in the province. Despite it being published in black and white in the budget book in the beginning of the year, the department indicated it allocated 48.8 million rand over the MTEF period, with 20 million rand ring fence in the provincial reserves to assist municipalities to be able to procure energy from independent power producers. Research costs money. Expertise costs money.
Honorable Chair, will you please take your seat? Honorable members, there is a bit of a problem here. We can't be in a jamboree in the house. We need order, please. Someone's microphone is active. I would like to request that you mute your microphone. IT, please mute everyone and then unmute the speaker. Thank you. You may proceed, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Speaker. If you could just indicate to me, please, where you require me to start again. If the table could just indicate from where they wish me to start. Speaker, I'm unable to hear you.
Can you hear me now, Honorable Bartman?
I can hear you now, thank you.
You have exactly 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
No problem, thank you so much. Speaker, the department indicated that it allocated 48.8 million rand over the MTEF period with another 20 million rand ring fence in the provincial reserves to assist municipalities to be able to procure energy from IPPs. Research costs money. Expertise costs money. Money does not grow on trees. The members previously also asked why NERSA is increasing its rates. But NERSA, Speaker, is a national body, so I would urge Member Nkondo to WhatsApp Minister Mantashe directly. Energy is the foundation of an economy, and it is the job of government to ensure clear legislative instruments are put into place in order for us to grow our economy, and we must invest for energy wisely. The National Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy had a 60-day deadline to introduce amendments to energy regulation to allow persons to install up to 100 megawatts in small-scale embedded generation without requiring NERSA licensing. This deadline has passed. Could the Provincial Minister please indicate whether he is aware of any of these amendments being published anytime soon by the National Minister? If so, what are the relevant details? A secure, stable supply of energy fuels jobs, dignity and safety of residents, and it is why the MER project is a game changer for the Western Cape in achieving our crucial goal of growing the province's local economy. The DA in the Western Cape remains committed to leveraging energy opportunities for economic recovery and growth of the provincial economy in order to support the growth of jobs, dignity and safety for all residents of this province. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bartman. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Minister, Minister Mania.
Thank you, Speaker. I wish to assure members that we are concerned about the fact that the amendments to Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act, which will of course provide for licensing exemption for energy generation products from 1 megawatt to 100 megawatts, which of course is vital and is a game changer, have been inexplicably delayed. But we have heard and we have been advised that it is likely that the regulations will be gazetted during the course of tomorrow, which of course is Friday, the 13th of August, 2021. And certainly, if those regulations are not gazetted, we certainly will follow up with national government because the amendments to the regulations, as I've said, are a game changer and will significantly promote investment in new generation capacity in the Western Cape. We have also, contrary to what some members suggest, made significant progress. Although the Municipal Energy Resilience Project is complex and is going to take time, and it will take time, of course, to beat load shedding. But the candidate municipalities have been identified. We've succeeded in concluding memorandums of understanding with the candidate municipalities. And of course, we have completed a request for information where 82 submissions were lodged with the department, and those are currently being evaluated with a view to identifying pioneering projects, and we will certainly keep members informed. Of course, there is concern about the increase in electricity prices, but of course, electricity prices increases are driven principally by massive Eskom electricity price increases. Municipalities, in some cases, having to pay 17.8% more to buy electricity from Eskom, which is precisely why we need more competition to drive down prices, which will be good for businesses and households, and which is precisely why we are implementing the Municipal Energy Resilience Program in the Western Cape. We, of course, must ensure that these projects are sustainable, and it's precisely for that reason that the Municipal Energy Resilience Project is supporting municipalities to do detailed studies prior to implementation to ensure that the projects are sustainable. Speaker, it would be remiss of me not to say that the Municipal Energy Resilience Initiative builds on great work that has been done over the past 5 years to, for example, drive up the use of solar PV, which is a further element in our arsenal to beat load shedding. We have now concluded 24 of our 25 municipalities allow small-scale embedded generation, and 20 municipalities have regulator-approved tariffs. There have been direct engagements with businesses in order to drive up solar PV. And of course, the Western Cape government itself has invested in solar PV in own buildings, which has resulted in considerable cost savings. These are just, I think, a few measures which demonstrate our commitment to building a green, resilient future and beating load shedding in the Western Cape.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that concludes the second interpellation. We now move to interpellation number 3. And this is the interpellation by Honourable Heron to the Honourable Minister of Community Safety, Minister Fritz. I would like to now recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the question from the Honourable Heron. I'm so happy he's asking the question because we always refer to LEAP officers as bliksoldaatjies. So I'm very happy that we can give some information on this. So I think it's important to note for the A part of the question is in the interpellation. It's important to know that the City of Cape Town is an implementing partner specifically in regard to the operationalization of the law enforcement component, and that the city has representation on social cohesion and urban design committees. Because there are other components. I just want to make the point. There are the violence prevention component, there's the law enforcement. The city is an implementing partner in the implementation of the law enforcement component. In partnership with the City of Cape Town, the Department of Community Safety launched the Law Enforcement Advancement Program, which is called the LEAP, which seeks to deploy 1,000 law enforcement officers by the end of 2021, and specifically deploy them in crime hotspots areas to enhance law enforcement capacity, to become boots on the ground force multipliers to the South African police services. And we have seen how it worked during the a threat of looting when they tried to come and do it in Cape Town and they couldn't survive. They can do it somewhere else, not here. To date, a total of 749 LEAP officers have been appointed in terms of the plan, of which 98 are currently receiving their training, while 651 LEAP officers have been deployed to crime hotspots in the province. The remaining 251 LEAP officers are on track for training and deployment, and the pandemic did affect certain progress as specific training colleges were unable to operate during the area of lockdown levels 2 and 3 and 5, in fact, specifically 5. The City of Cape Town approved the Law Enforcement Advancement Program and the city's contribution to the program. So in other words, the city council, the sitting council of the city approved it. The second part of that question, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the relevant agreement with the City of Cape Town, and we have a transfer payment agreement with the City of Cape Town, all parts of the safety plan are being implemented. So they're all in the process of being implemented. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Member Heron.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for the response. Speaker, when we started to, when this plan was first announced in 2019 as the biggest, boldest policing plan South Africa had ever seen, and we started asking to see the plan because it was announced at a media conference with a PowerPoint presentation, we find a 1.3 billion rand plan based on a 20-page working document. And Speaker, you and the Minister will know that I've been critical of this very flimsy document that supports such a massive spend. So that working document must also be read together with the City of Cape Town's own resolutions to approve the implementation of the LEAP plan. And the working document and the LEAP plan and the Minister's own announcements in this Parliament have made a number of commitments. And first of all, halving the murder rate in the province by 50% over the next 10 years. And I think we almost have used 2 of those years. Then deploying 500 law enforcement officers by 1 February 2020, and deploying a further 500 law enforcement officers by 1 July 2020. Now we hear that the full 1,000 law enforcement officers are only going to be deployed by the end of 2021. And I'm wondering where that plan was changed, because I haven't seen the City of Cape Town amend its LEAP plan to deviate from what it approved in 2019. Now, these law enforcement officers or LEAP officers were going to be deployed into 4 areas. One was going to be a neighborhood safety team, the other an area based crime prevention team, then a neighbor safety team based investigators, and a land invasion team. Now, Speaker, we've spent nearly R1 billion, or we've allocated nearly R1 billion over the last 3 financial years. 170 million in 2019-20, 417 million in 2020-2021, and 350 million in the current financial year, bringing it to 937 million rand. And what we have currently is 600 law enforcement officers, no investigators, according to the Minister's reply to my question, even though we were promised 50 investigators would be appointed within the first 12 months. And so we've allocated 937 million rand to this project already. We are nearly 2 years from the anniversary of the grand announcement and a full year after the promised deployment of 1,000 officers, including 50 investigators, but we only have 600 odd law enforcement officers deployed. And according to the Minister's written reply, only we do not have any investigators.
You have concluded your time for now, Honorable Heron. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Allen, the chairperson of the committee.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, through you, I wish to thank Member Heron for submitting the interpellation with regard to the Western Cape Safety Plan. I further wish to inform members of this House that on the 24th of August 2021, the Standing Committee on Community Safety will receive a detailed status update on the safety needs in the Western Cape with specific reference to the deployment of the Law Enforcement Advancement Programme, the area-based teams established, and the Youth Safety Ambassadors Programme, among other items in terms of the Western Cape Recovery Plan. Speaker, as stated numerous times, the safety plan is a whole-of-government approach to the challenges faced in the province as a result of crime. The deployment of the LEAP officers, again, as stated before, is not a silver bullet, but rather a proactive step to compensate the inefficiencies and under-resourcing within SAPS, which is well documented and a long-standing issue. Speaker, recently I joined LEAP officers in the Delft area, which saw over the period of 1 April 2020 to 1 April 2021, a decline of 20 SAPS members to the granted SAPS establishment. In Delft, Speaker, the SAPS police to population ratio stands at a shocking 1 to 696 community members. That is more than triple the UN standard of 1 officer to every 220 residents. I thus welcome the efforts by the Western Cape government and the City of Cape Town, which countered the reduction of 20 SAPS members in Delft by more than tripling the boots on the ground. We have additional 73 LEAP officers to the Delft area to supplement resources on the ground and to promote crime fighting and prevention initiatives. It is clear that these collaborative efforts support the shortages of SAPS. Speaker, I further learned through my oversight responsibility that all 10 of the priority crime SAPS stations in the province has seen a decrease in the granted SAPS establishment. I've seen firsthand, Speaker, the working relationship between SAPS members on the ground and law enforcement officers. And this collaborative...
You have exhausted your time. Thank you very much. Honorable members, I don't know whether there is a delay in the microphone when I say the time has been concluded. I will just try and do it earlier because I don't want to disturb the honorable members in their time. Once they're busy speaking, it can cause a bit of a time delay, but I will see what else to do to try and assist in this regard. I would like to request now the Honorable Member Kama.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the DA's manifesto for 2019 elections promised the people a provincial police force. Following its failure to implement this, the Premier then moved to promise people recruitment, training, and deployment of 3,000 new law enforcement officers to murder hotspots to halve the murder rate in the province. Later, this was reduced down to 1,000 without any explanation, and this government has missed all targets to train and deploy the additional 500 LEAP officers since 2020. We're eagerly waiting to see if they will really meet the October 2021 target. The biggest challenge for us remains that the DA cynical hoax called the safety plan does not address the root causes of crime and will not halve the murder rate under the current setup. We were promised that these LEAP officers would operate under SAPS command, and yet this had not been the case in many instances. We have been sold lies that LEAP officers will be deployed to halve murder rate, yet the truth is that majority of the 1,000 officers have only received basic training of peace officer training, traffic warden certificate, and the city's bylaws. The 5-week basic firearm training only comes later. How will these officers halve murder rate when they only deployed to half of the murder precincts in the province? Why are they not deployed to all murder hotspot areas? Is there any value for money in this shame of a plan? How many officers have received the basic firearm training to date? As the Premier had assured this House that government will from time to time review the impact of this safety plan, is this not the time? is this not the time for government to focus more on creating a conducive environment for policing? Like the roads in Krafontein, which is a major rate, are very in a bad condition, and we want government to fix that so that police have an environment conducive to fight crime. Thanks, Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Treko.
Thank you, Speaker. It is safe to say that the long-standing pandemic that the Western Cape has always battled with and continue to battle with without any reported success is the issue of rampant crime in the province. One of the focus areas of the so-called safety plan is violence prevention. However, the ever-increasing taxi violence, gender-based violence, turf wars, to mention a few, have exposed the inability of the Western Cape government's crime prevention efforts. This has continued to an extent that the provincial government continuously calls for the SANDF to be permanently deployed in the province as they realize that the safety plan is a shame, which will never yield any results even in the long term. What we now want to understand is that what short-term successes has the safety plan achieved since its inception in halving the murder rate in the province up to date? What successes on the part of the safety plan can be reported as part of the proactive steps that are taken to curb the gender-based violence in the province? Thank you very much, Somlo.
Thank you, Honorable Treko. May I now request the Honorable Heron to address the House. Honorable Heron.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I want to pick up where the Minister left off, where he said all parts of the safety plan or league plan are being implemented. Because in July this year, just a few weeks ago, he replied to my written question saying that there are no investigators that have been deployed as part of the league plan. So I'm not sure if the Minister has read the city's league plan or if he was misleading us when he replied to my question in that fashion. Because in reply to my question last month, the Minister said the city's controversial SIU or SSIU as it's currently called does not form part of the league plan. But the league plan adopted by Council, which is supposed to implement, as the Minister said, the Western Cape Safety Plan, says that 50 new investigation officers would be included in the city's SIU, now called SSIU. So the plan says that the SSIU would provide the investigation capacity and will focus on shadow investigations of criminal cases generated by the LEAP neighborhood safety teams. So, Speaker, I ask or invite the Minister to consider page 21 of the LEAP plan, which sets out the role of the SSIU in the LEAP plan and in the Western Cape Safety Plan. And there he will find that it says the SSIU provides investigation capacity and the teams will focus on shadow investigation of criminal cases, and that each station will have 5 SSIU members accountable to the current existing SSIU structure, and that the SSIU will be responsible for information and intelligence gathering. So can the Minister explain his answer that the SSIU does not form part of the LEAP plan, when very clearly it does? It seems to me the Minister is really trying to avoid answering questions about the legality of the SIU, where it derives its powers to conduct shadow criminal investigations, and whether it is lawfully gathering intelligence. Because clearly the investigators were always part of the safety plan, and the LEAP plan includes placing them under the command and control of the head of the SSIU. But the head of the SSIU was or still is Mr. Reinhold Telmakis. And Telmakis is a former cop who's been criminally charged in a fraud case stemming from years ago in another province. And I asked the Minister whether he had exercised any oversight over the SIU, and in particular whether he was concerned about or inquired about the charges against Telmakis, given that there are officers placed under his command that form part of the LEAP plan. And the answers I got was that the Minister does not exercise oversight over the SSIU because he has no mandate to. So how can the Minister have no mandate to exercise oversight or maybe even make inquiries about the legality of a unit, the criminal charges of its head or chief, when it's part of a safety plan. So, Speaker, I'm asking the Minister to please tell us under what authority the SSIU exercises the powers to conduct criminal investigations and gather intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Heron. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Skarrel cutter. That's what we call it on the, we call that on the Cape Flats. Skarrel cutter. You know, when I don't know what language I must tell the Honorable Brett Heron that we have our safety plan and our TPA that deals with the law enforcement advance plan or program deals specifically with law enforcement officers. What I have to do with the SSIU and SUIU and what other investigators, they got nothing to do with us. And I want to again say it got absolutely nothing to do with us. What we deal with are 1,000 law enforcement officers on the ground. Now, if the city has their own little security plan and their own little underground, that's their business. That's not, we got nothing to do with it. And I don't know how many times I must say this to him. I'm saying it 100 times to him, and he wants to go and fuss. You want to scuttle and scuttle and scuttle like a scuttle cut.
Honorable Minister, please take your seat. There's a point of order. What's your point of order, Honorable?
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I just find, and I'm not sure whether this view is shared by other members, but when the MEC speaks and gets excited, he starts shouting, and then you just actually can't hear anymore. So I would just appeal to ask the member to relax, speak a bit slower, so that we can all understand.
That's an opinion and a point of expression. But what I would like to request is for the honorable members to listen carefully. So if there is a problem with the sound quality, then we can attend to that. Honorable Minister, it was a point by Honorable Gagmo, the leader of the opposition. I don't know how the Honorable Minister wished to attend to that, but it's not a point of order, simply an advice and a suggestion. So I'm not going to rule on that matter. It was just an opinion by the Honorable Member. May I request that you proceed? You only used a minute of your time, so you still have 3 minutes of your time, Honorable Minister.
So I won't continue to waste my time to respond to the Honorable Heron. I think he must wait when the Department of Community Safety comes to the standing committee, and he must attend standing committee meetings, and he will learn far more, like the Honorable Kama, who talks a lot of stuff that's not in line, but he at least attends. And when he speaks, he can speak with a bit of more information. The Honorable Kego, I just want to say, you know, we've seen now during the taxi violence, and we have seen the way Honorable Daylon Mitchell, the Premier, myself, and the whole cabinet responded to the taxi violence. And I must say also with the real cooperation from Minister Vakile Babalula, you know, that we really had cooperation and we worked together. And it's that spirit that we want to continue to solve the kind of crime problems in this province. We cannot continue because the criminals are the ones who's laughing and enjoying it. Even in these taxi syndicates where people are, you know, the syndications and, you know, little, it's almost like criminal gangs operating, that we need to get the legitimate bodies to really take the space again. And so to solve the problems of violence and crime in this. And I want to say to him, it's not us calling for the SANDF. They must get us enough police officers, like all other provinces. They must give us enough POP officers. It's not us calling on the SANDF. Give us enough officers so that we don't need to get another 1,000 from the you know, this budget in this province to assist the South African police services. And that's all we've been asking for all the time. Give us enough human resources. Give us enough other type of resources so that we can execute and we can work and do our oversight. Then we can sit back and just be an oversight body. We unfortunately in this province, we're not. We work and we want to see and make sure that on the ground people are safe. And that's, I think, the main kind of thing. Part of the other question of some of the scuttle cutter was the question of whether were ready, for instance, for the looting. And I think one of the honourable Alan, I think his point, when he saw the LEAP officers in action, when people have seen our neighbourhood watchers working with the LEAP officers, all in action. And I know the ANC got a big problem with our neighbourhood watchers. I don't know why, but I think the point we're making is those are women and men, and mainly women, who actually came out during the biggest threats for our malls, to come and protect all those places, to protect their own communities and protect those business and jobs in this province. And so we don't have a situation that happened somewhere else in KwaZulu-Natal or in the place called Gauteng. Also the point that the honourable member made about firearm training, the LEAP officers can't be out in the field if they haven't had the firearm training. And we've checked that all the time. So, I really want to implore on the members to play a constructive role and to stop being destructive, because crime is a real thing in this province. And we want to solve the problem of crime. And so on that, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
Thank you,
for indulging me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Honourable members, we now come to the end of interpellations and we move to questions for oral reply. I do see a hand. I'm trying to understand what is that hand for. Honourable Kama, is that a point of order, sir?
Yes, Speaker, I had raised my hand earlier. I wanted to check with you whether it is parliamentary when we are called to be destructive when we ask questions that are perhaps not liked by the MEC.
All right, I will follow on that. I really missed that. I do not have the content of the actual point of order, but I will come back to that. Thank you, Honourable Kama. Honourable members, as I indicated, we have now concluded the interpellations. We're now moving to questions for oral reply, and the first question is by. Firstly, let me just indicate that the honourable member that asks the question will be given the first opportunity for a follow-up, and if there is no follow-up, then we'll move to the other honourable members who have expressed interest to speak, and that can only be done by show of hand in the online, and those honourable members who are in the chamber will do so by indicating by lifting their own hands. May I now proceed? The Honourable Minister of Transport and Public Works, Honourable Mitchell. The question was asked by Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Speaker, in the interest of internet connectivity and stability, I'm going to leave my camera off if that's in order.
That is correctly fine, Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. Speaker, thank you very much to the Honourable Member for the question. The Department of Transport and Public Works, in its capacity as custodian and manager of all provincial government buildings, has installed backup generators in all provincially owned office buildings, and its way has addressed all previous load shedding demands since 2015-2016. The capacity of the generators is based on the electrical demands of each building, and the department performs routine maintenance comprising several services per year on all backup generators. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I now recognize Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I mean, this sounds like a very expensive exercise, backup generators, due to no fault of this government. Can the Honourable Minister please tell us, has this been a great expense to this government, and how's its impact on service delivery?
Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to the Honourable Mackenzie for the follow-up question. Yes, it has. All these costs have increased, but what I need to state is that it has been spread over an extended period since the start of the extensive load shedding in 2015. For example, in 2018, the department supplied or installed a generator at a building in George, which is a shared office building that was occupied by provincial departments, including the Department of Transport and Public Works. And that installation, for example, Speaker, for the generator was estimated or was cost just a little bit less, or just over 7.7 million rand. But yeah, as we continue with the construction of new buildings for the use by the Western Cape government, the provision of generators is now part of the fitting out cost and not procured as an add-on. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I see the Honorable Mackenzie first, and then I will give the Honorable Mvimbi an opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, we've seen Medupi is now broken again after being opened up last week. Clearly, this electricity is going to be, we're not happy, Honorable Cameron Dagmo. We'll be happy when your government that caused the problem is gone. We hope that your government that caused this problem is gone. Honorable Speaker.
Order, Honorable
Dagmo through comments, so you must expect a response.
Please proceed, Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, this is obviously not sustainable. And what long-term solutions would the Minister and the government propose? Because spending money on generators due to a fault by another sphere of government is obviously not your fault. So what long-term solutions would you propose? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Minister. Before you proceed, Honorable Minister, I've got the hands of Honorable Mvimbi and the Honorable Member Said. So after which then there will be no further speakers. I accept the Minister to respond. I recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, thank you to Honorable Mackenzie for the question. Well, the reality is that in line with the current approaches supported by the Western Cape government and the Department of Transport and Public Works, has always acted to increase the energy efficiency of its buildings to make greater use of solar energy and to encourage the development of green energy solutions. All these details with regards to the reduction of the use of energy are contained in the 9th edition of the Property Efficiency Report that is issued by the Department of Transport and Public Works. And the Western Cape government has always strongly supported the expansion of the provision of private energy providers. And I think in the interpellation, Minister Mania highlighted that as part of the reduction to an unreliable grid. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, I now recognize Honourable Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, Honourable Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Just a follow-up to the Minister on the question asked by Honourable Mackenzie, that in 2017, Premier Helen Zille said that government will save up to 500,000 in electricity costs from solar PV panels on rooftop of its buildings. I just want to check whether the Minister is in a position to disclose how much the government has saved from electricity on each year between 2018 to date.
Thank you, Honourable Mvimbi. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Unfortunately, thank you to Honourable Mvimbi for the question. Unfortunately, I don't have that information available, but I will supply it to the Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I now recognize Honourable Said.
Honourable Speaker, my apologies. My hand was up on a point of order, but it's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Said. Now let's look at the honourable members if there is any more speakers. It doesn't appear so. Well, in that, I see the Honourable Mackenzie in the chamber. Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you. I just want to find out from the Honourable Minister, Given the intention of the previous premier in 2017, as Member Bimbi said, was to save money, 500,000 Rand a year on solar PV. We know that Medupi, 12 years overdue, is 80 billion overdue. The latest accident, I think, is 4 billion. What would the minister say would that expense be? Would that be a saving or a greater expense caused by the national government?
Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie. I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, to Honourable Mackenzie, as indicated to Honourable Mvimbi, I don't have that cost, but logic tells me it would be a greater expense. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that concludes this particular question. I now move to the next question again by the Honourable Mackenzie to the Honourable Minister of Transport and Public Works. I now recognize the Honourable Minister Mitchell.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to Honourable Mackenzie for the question. Honourable Speaker, to part A of the question, it's assumed that the term spiking refers to the criminal practice of placing spikes on the road to enable attacks on motorists. The practice is a criminal one and would be reported to the South African Police Services, and the Provincial Traffic does not hold a central database of spiking incidents across our province. With regards to the B part of the question, that each provincial traffic centre develops quarterly operational plans for their respective areas based on historical trends or occurrences for that particular area. These plans are approved by senior management and duty rosters are drawn up for each officer. While we endeavour not to deviate from operational plans, deviation from plans do occur to respond to operational emergencies or demands, such as crashes or protest action, or like we recently saw with the taxi violence. Each traffic officer has been allocated a handheld device, which is linked to an electronic back office system called Enforce, and the deployment of each officer happens by informing them of their deployment through this particular device, and this allows the officers to report directly to the locations to where they are deployed, where previously they had to report to a particular office. The info system supported by the handheld device and is used to deploy the traffic officers is also used as a reporting tool by the traffic officers. Every action by a traffic officer is captured on the handheld device, and in certain instances, actions are captured automatically. All this data and information is automatically fed back into the info system, and the overall performance of an officer is monitored and evaluated by the supervisor or manager on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. This information is also utilized to manage an officer's performance quarterly through performance management systems, and the supervisor responsible is tasked with identifying non-performance and putting in place remedial measures designed to rectify non-performance if necessary. Part C of the question, I've already explained that each provincial traffic centre develops quarterly operational plans for the respective areas based on the historical trends of occurrences. And if spiking or attacks on motorists is identified within an area or along a particular stretch of road, it will be addressed in a quarterly operational plans, and plans to mitigate attacks on motorists usually include an increased presence or increased patrols, and the plans to mitigate attacks on the motorists will often be developed jointly with other law enforcement stakeholders. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, I now recognize Honourable Mackenzie in the chamber.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you for the comprehensive response, Honourable Minister. Minister, obviously, spiking in other provinces has been extremely terrible, and one hopes that it doesn't become a problem here. In terms of monitoring our highways in the Western Cape, the N7, the R300, N1 and N2, what monitoring tools, and I understand you can't share operational details, one always respect that, but what monitoring tools does the Department of Transport and your traffic have in place? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable. Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and my apologies for jumping straight into it. Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie, for the follow-up question. Okay. Honourable Speaker, through you, monitoring on our roads happen in many ways. And the province and some municipalities have contact numbers where the public can call in and inform authorities of incidents on the roads. We also have a provincial control centre that members of the public can contact. The province also has both average speed over distance cameras and mobile cameras which monitor speed, and these cameras are used to detect potential fatigue of long distance public transport operators and criminal activities. And the department also, in partnership with SANRAL, has a network of cameras which we call the freeway management system. And this particular system is used to monitor congestion and incidents on a road. We also have signage on our roads, which also keep road users informed. But this is also linked to the Transport Management Centre of the City of Cape Town, and the resources are then deployed to incidents when needed. And I was fortunate to see this in action with the recent taxi violence, and when the certain taxi ranks and routes were closed, and one could actually directly see the activity at the various taxi ranks. In addition, as I explained in my earlier question, that each traffic centre also develops quarterly operational plans, which includes duties to monitor high-risk roads as identified. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Just for the process, Honourable Members, I have the member who asked the question, if Honourable Mackenzie wishes to proceed. And then I've got the Honourable Member Mvimbi, whose hand is up. If Honourable Mackenzie is not speaking, I will have Honourable Mvimbi right away. But I see the Honourable Mackenzie is up. You may proceed, Honourable Mackenzie, in the chamber.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Minister, obviously we've seen in other provinces, sadly, the incidents of trucks being hijacked, etc. And that has not been very incidental in the Western Cape, and we really appreciate that. And I wanted to find out from you, what training does our officers do in the Western Cape that patrol our roads to ensure that they're very effective? And you can share some of those details with us, please.
Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Mackenzie for the follow-up question. Speaker, in order to become a traffic officer, there's a prescribed qualification that traffic officers have to obtain. However, the training with the current curriculum is limited and doesn't fully equip traffic officers to effectively and safely deal with crime on a highway. As I previously indicated to this House, traffic officers are normally the first respondents to incidents, and as part of the transition to a highway patrol and interception unit, we are currently exploring more advanced forms of training that will equip officers to better deal with crime on our roads. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Members, I now recognize the Honourable Member Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Minister, given that a lot of these spiking incidents happen either late in the evening or early hours of the morning when there are no traffic officers on the road, will the department consider deploying additional traffic officers to work night shifts?
Thank you, Honourable Mvimbi. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Mvimbi for the question. Honourable Mvimbi, the provincial traffic officers work on a 24/7 rotational basis in the province, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the only province that do so. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. In the absence of more hands, I'm going to take Honourable Mackenzie in the chamber.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Just a final question on the training. Is the Honourable Minister share with us, where does the training take place? Is it done in-house or outside of government facilities? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, in the Western Cape, we have one of the 10 traffic training colleges in South Africa. The one in the Western Cape is under the management and control of the Department of Transport and Public Works, and it's located at Jean Low Traffic College in Brackenfell. And most of our departmental traffic officers are trained there. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that's the end of question number 2. I now recognize, we now move to question number 3 by Honourable Bartman to the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Opportunities. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Member for the question. Comments, of course, were drafted by the Department of Economic Development in collaboration with Green Cape, which I approved and submitted on behalf of the Western Cape Government on the 4th of June 2021. I have to say that policy and planning for industrial development and the uptake of electric vehicles has certainly been behind the curve. But despite the delay, I have to say that the Green Paper, we think, moves in the right direction and is certainly welcome. The overall thrust, we think, of the Green Paper is positive. And I think to the Green Paper's credit, it is brutally honest when it says that new energy vehicles are an inevitability rather than a possibility. I mean, the Green Paper realizes that we need to prepare for electric vehicles. And the preparation, of course, is important considering the global shift towards lower emissions, cleaner energy, and greater energy resilience, all of which the Western Cape is committed to. Failing to adapt, and I think the Green Paper is very clear about this, could also have an adverse, I beg your pardon, impact on our exports. South Africa's main automotive export markets are transitioning from internal combustion engines towards electric vehicles. And for example, it's forecast that in the EU, which currently absorbs nearly 60% of South Africa's vehicle exports, 40% of new vehicle sales will be electric vehicles by 2030, increasing over time to 80% by 2040. And of course, this is driven by the need to achieve emission and transition targets in these markets. And as a consequence, of course, South Africa's automotive manufacturing industry, if it cannot shift to manufacturing electrical vehicles and components for electrical vehicles, we of course risk losing one of our key export markets. And that's why I think the national government and the industry regard the new policy on electric vehicles as being so urgent. So the Green Paper is certainly positive, and we have made some recommendations in our submission. Some headlines at a very high level. I mean, the Green Paper, we think, is a little bit light on specific details in relation to targets and the quantification of those targets. And so we made a proposal that the Green Paper set clear targets and present ultimately a plan of action for achieving those targets. Also, of course, the Green Paper points out that the transition to electrical vehicles should be accompanied by a transition in the country's energy mix to ensure that the benefits of increasing the uptake in electrical vehicles is not eroded by cars being charged off a coal-fired electricity grid. And so we also made some proposals about the Green Paper exploring the upgrade of the electricity grid, looking at renewable energy solutions and smart charging. On infrastructure, of course, the Green Paper makes reference to strengthening the charging infrastructure network and the role of the private sector, but it is really unclear on the role that the private sector will play, and we thought that that matter needed to be clarified. Also, on the question of incentives, we felt that there needed to be a much more detailed investigation and more detail ultimately presented on the kinds of incentives that might stimulate the electrical vehicle market. But we do, of course, strongly support the proposal in the Green Paper for lower or zero import duties and tariffs for electric vehicles and electric vehicles components, which will, of course, reduce the cost of importing electrical vehicles and electrical components in South Africa, which, of course, is vital for driving up demand for electrical vehicles and new energy vehicles in South Africa. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, I now recognize the Honourable Member Bartman for the first opportunity.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I wanted to find out if the Minister could indicate to us what infrastructure and or resources would the department require in order to promote the advancement of an energy vehicle industry in the Western Cape province. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Bartman. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. We have been working hard for quite some time to support the advancement of new energy vehicles, which is precisely why we were delighted that the Green Paper was published and that there finally is serious consideration being given to this sector. We, of course, to support the advancement, have worked in collaboration with Green Cape to produce what I think is a world-class electrical vehicle market intelligence report, which I certainly recommend to members. That report provides industry with market trends, with market opportunities, and includes opportunities, of course, for local manufacturing in electrical vehicles and electrical buses. It certainly looks at the manufacturing of components like lithium-ion batteries, and it looks at opportunities in construction, retail, and mining. Of course, our department and the entities, particularly Westra and Atlantis SEZ, stand ready to support businesses who are interested in investing in the sector. And of course, although we are not directly involved in the rollout and exploring the rollout of more green charging stations, the City of Cape Town, as the Honourable Member is probably aware, in collaboration with the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, has launched the first solar-powered EV charging station free of charge for members of the public, which I believe is located in the Belleville Civic Centre. But, Honourable Member, I think that ultimately what we require is certainty when it comes to national policy. And we have contributed, as you know, through our Green Paper and our numerous market intelligence reports to that debate, because above all, to advance the market for new energy vehicles and to advance the sector will require policy certainty when it comes to new energy vehicles in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Bartman, if you have a second opportunity, you are more than welcome to do so. But let me, for the purposes of recording, I've got the Honourable Nkondlo, I've got Honourable van der Westhuizen, and then Honourable Nkondlo. Honourable Bartman, do you have an interest to speak again?
Speaker, it was my impression that usually there's 4 follow-ups, so then my hand would be 4th, but if you want me to go now, I'm also willing to do so.
You want to take the last opportunity?
I'll wait for number 4, thank you.
That's fine, you have that right, it's okay. I'm going to give Honourable, I see Honourable van der Westhuizen, his name, his hand is no longer up. Have you withdrawn your hand, Honourable van der Westhuizen?
No, Chair.
All
I just
right, you may
loaded when you recognized me.
I now recognize you, followed by the Honorable Nkondlo thereafter.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, through you to the Minister. Minister, you just said that you and your department found the green paper a little bit thin on certain aspects. And my question is whether the National Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition has accepted any of the recommendations proposed by the Western Cape government, and if so, what are the details?
Thank you, Honorable van der Westhuizen. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. We have not received a response to our comments from the National Minister, so it's not possible for me at this stage to say whether our comments and our proposals have been accepted or adopted or not. But I think the important point here is to bear in mind that the green paper is really a first step in developing what the national government calls a master plan for the sector. In fact, they say that this is just simply a first input into a discussion paper. So this is really, I think, the beginning, not the end of the process. And certainly as the process unfolds, as the discussion paper is made public, we will certainly be able to gauge whether our recommendations have been adopted or rejected. And we certainly look forward to further engagements with national government on policy in relation to new energy vehicles in South Africa.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Speaker. I just wanted to check with the Minister, considering that the market intelligence report he refers to by Green Cape actually indicates that the Western Cape is outside of the three key automotive manufacturing hubs in the country. Now, one would be interested that in the submission of the province, where does the province see the role in the value chain of the province in as far as that industry is concerned, in particular as it relates to opportunities for small and medium enterprises? Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. The honourable member, of course, is absolutely correct. We do fall outside the main hubs for auto manufacturing, which of course are located principally in the Eastern Cape, in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng. And that's certainly something that I would like to rectify. But I think that there are still significant opportunities for us to explore becoming embedded in the value chain, manufacturing components for electrical vehicles. The market intelligence report, which he refers to, suggests that there's a significant opportunity, for example, for manufacturing lithium-ion batteries, not least because manganese, which is a key output, I think about 80% of the total manganese output in the world is located in our country. So we certainly see an opportunity for our province to become involved in certainly the manufacturing of components for electrical vehicles, and we are having conversations with manufacturers in the hubs which he refers to about exactly that, and we hope that over time this could translate into significant opportunities for small businesses in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now recognize Honorable Bartman.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, Should the Western Cape start increasing in terms of the manufacturing of the components of electric vehicles, as you have mentioned, based on this research from Green Cape, we will require extra skills within the Western Cape, as I don't think that currently everyone would have the necessary skills in that particular sector. So what will the department thus then be doing to upskill people in the Western Cape in preparation for such a future energy vehicle industry or components thereof within the Western Cape? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bartman. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. The honourable member is, of course, absolutely correct. To be competitive in the manufacturing of these new energy vehicles is going to require a significant, I think, reorientation of the sector and indeed upskilling. And in fact, this is an issue which we raised in our comments on the Green Paper, where we thought that we needed much more detail on what would be required in order to make the sector competitive ultimately, and how would that translate into a transition program for the industry. Despite that, of course, it is early days, and we are already I think, investing in skills. It's early days, of course, but already a number of officials from various departments are participating in an electrical vehicle program, which is sponsored by the National Centre for E-Mobility, and that is already, even although it is early days, we are already starting to build capacity and upskill, at least in government, to prepare for the electrical vehicles and the manufacture of components and all the implications in relation to rolling out infrastructure in the Western Cape. I'd emphasize, of course, that it is early days. If we look at the statistics, last year, which could be a bit of an outlier year, only 92 electric vehicles were sold in South Africa. But there is reason to be optimistic. I'm not sure if the honourable member is aware, but a electrical vehicle perception survey was conducted last year. 3,000 people participated in the survey. They were all car buyers, and 68% of the participants in the survey suggested that they would like to own an electrical vehicle in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that concludes this particular question. I'm trying to see if there's a hand there. No, there can't be. All right. Now the next question is question number 4 by Honourable Xhego to the Honourable Minister Simas, the Minister of Human Settlements. I now recognize the Honourable Minister. Just before you come in, Honourable Minister, I see the hand of Honourable Murray. Honourable Murray, is that a point of order, sir?
Speaker, I did have my hand up, but because you didn't see it, I decided to lower my hand because you have your hands full as it is. I lowered my hand again, and so I won't be asking a question. We've already moved beyond the electric cars issue.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Murray. I apologize. I completely omitted that. I apologize for that. It won't be repeated. Honourable members, we're now on the question number 4. I recognize the Honourable Minister of Human Settlements. Honourable Minister Simas.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Apologies for not putting on my camera. I'm just trying to save on bandwidth so I can stay connected for the remainder of the meeting. Firstly, thank you to the member for the question, and I will answer the member as follows, Honourable Speaker. Over the years, the department has shown its commitment to improving the lives of the people of Tkolweni. Between 2007 to 2015, the department constructed 1,219 service sites and 785 top structures at a cost of 138,323,154 rand. In this financial year, the department has approved the funding of 33.5 million rand, which excludes professional fees for the construction of 169 top structures in Tkolweni. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I will give the first opportunity to Honourable Klego if he so wishes to follow up. And then I've got Honourable Maseko. I have no further. Then I have in the house, in the chamber, Honourable Mackenzie. Just want to see the other hands here. I see there's two hands, but I can't see the other hand, IT.
Honourable Maran.
Thank you, Honourable Maran. Let's proceed with Honourable Klego.
Thank you, Somlomo. To the Minister, the housing project of Ekolweni was first approved sometime in October 2019. Now, what we want to understand, what took the Provincial Department of Human Settlement to step in now and make sure that there is progress in that housing project, as the majority of the people in that area still stay in shacks. As we have seen that recently, there's been a number of fire reports where shacks have been burnt down. Can the department respond to that? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Klego. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and thank you, Member Klego, for the follow-up question. Firstly, the member needs to understand, Honourable Speaker, that the local sphere of government, in this case, it's Pito municipality, has a specific role to play, and dependent on the type of approach that we do with various projects, it's either that the municipality runs with the process, or alternatively, they request the provincial department to play a specific role. Now, as we are aware, various projects, there is a specific life cycle for planning until the date of implementation, because a fair amount of the responsibility to prepare a specific project to be implementation ready resorts with the local sphere of government. So that is why this project was only approved in 2019, but obviously a lot of work preceded that. Why did we only enter the fray this year? Firstly, we need to understand that since last year, when the project started falling behind its originally reported schedule, I did have engagements with Pito on various occasions when I visited the Garden Route district as part of my district outreach. We offered them on numerous times a chance to hand over the project back to province, because we do understand that the community of Tkolweni, which is historically the oldest informal settlement in Pito as well, has waited many, many years for various opportunities, but more so for these housing opportunities. And as such, this is quite a burning point within that community. To such an extent, Honourable Speaker, that I actually engaged the community leaders later on in this regard when there was the first closing of the N2 in 2020, which ultimately, after engaging them, we could then ultimately see the N2 opening again due to the provincial government's intervention. Pito did not take up our offer to hand the project over to the provincial department. Fast forward to 2021, once again, the N2 had to close after Pito once again could not stick to their own timelines. There are various other anomalies and reasons for that closure, but at that specific meeting, Honourable Speaker, they ultimately then made the decision to hand the project over to the provincial department because, one, they could not stick to their timeline. Two, the process, which ultimately is their process of appointing a contractor, ultimately led them into a bit of headbutting with the then contractor. And the community were getting restless because they kept on communicating timelines, which was not realistic. And as such, We have now played our part. They've given it back to province, admitting that they could not continue due to various reasons. And now we are in the process of ensuring that we can catch up lost time in due course, but ultimately that we can afford the community of Tkolweni the rightful housing opportunities which they've been long been waiting for. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Minister, community dynamics in human settlements plays a huge role in delaying implementation of the projects, and which the above mentioned, the Tkolweni is not immune to those community dynamics, hence the delay. But I just want to hear from you, just specific, what were the reasons exactly for this project to be handed over to the province? And since the handover, what is the status of the progress to the project itself in Tkolweni? Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Maseko. I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Speaker. No, indeed, community dynamics does play a huge role, more so when a municipality ultimately initiated the procurement process of a specific service provider. In this instance, it was a specific service provider to deliver and construct the top structures. But proceeding to that, because Tkolweni Botcheskloof is like I said, the oldest informal settlement in Bito, we need to understand that there's already existing structures. So the project package was packaged in such a way that they needed to ensure that there's movement of individuals to a TRA, and I must say the TRA, which was something separate from this, was also funded by the provincial department to ensure that the decanting or the clearing of the site can happen systematically. So that happened. Secondly is, Honourable Speaker, to the member, then ultimately the contract had to be on site to start ensuring that they then ultimately start the commencement of the timeline as was agreed upon between the municipality and the service provider, because remember, Bito municipality initiated the supply chain process, which ultimately appointed their specific service provider for the top structures. Fast forward to what's been happening this year, Honourable Speaker, because this was vastly covered by the media and various whole players delivered comment. The project, Honourable Member Maseko, was handed over to our department formally on the 18th of June 2021. Now, you will recall, in the House will recall, Honourable Speaker, that this handover occurred after the community saw that the municipality would not, once again, be in a position to commence with this project due to a dispute between Bito municipality and the contractors as appointed, I need to emphasize, appointed by Bito municipality. As a department, Honourable Speaker, we have demonstrated our commitment to this project by ensuring that within a week after Bito municipality handed over the project back to province, that we ultimately appointed a contractor and they were in place. In addition to this, to further strengthen our commitment to that community, Honourable Speaker, the contractor engaged the community leadership while also doing a site visit and walkabout with the community leadership and the local councillor as part of the pre-planning for the commencement for them to go onto site. Regrettably, Honourable Speaker, as is the case, sadly, with so many other instances in other areas in this province, due to the dispute between the contractor and Bito municipality, this matter ended up in court. The contractor also threatened to interdict us as a provincial department should we commence with this project or should the contractor go on to site. This court matter is, I'm happy to say, in the process of being finalized, and to such an extent that while we were waiting, Honourable Speaker, we ensured that we continued with community engagements so that we can prevent the N2 from closing. But ultimately, with the trust of the community leadership, we will soon see that this project will commence and we will go back onto site and we'll try as a department to get it back on track. But I need to emphasize the community is playing a key role, and the leadership have now realized that the provincial government is there to assist them, that human settlements will ensure with their support that we get this project back on track. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, I now recognize Honourable Maran.
Thanks very much, Speaker, for the opportunity, and good afternoon to everyone. Speaker, my question to the MEC is whether any of the Kolweni informal settlement residents will benefit from the recently launched Better Living Challenge to build people decent shacks. If so, what are the relevant details and when will the project be implemented? Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Maran. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I would advise the Honorable Member to post this question for either oral response formally or written response. And I will also advise the Honorable Member through your Speaker to actually read what the Better Living Challenge is about before posing questions in the House. Thank you.
So the Honorable MEC is not able to answer on the question.
Order, Honorable Maran. You don't ask your question and answer it for yourself. I think when the Honorable Minister responds, we accept ministers to answer whether we like the responses or we don't. That's unfortunately the spirit of democracy. So I just want to raise that with you. May I please request the Honorable Tlego to raise his question.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. With the Minister having mentioned the issue of the court battle with the initial contractor that was identified for this project, will there be no further delays in the project itself now, whilst the court battle is still continuing, in ensuring that we curb any potential protest and unrest that has got a direct, heavy impact on the economy of Pito? Will this project be able to move on swiftly without delays?
Thank you, Honorable Tlego. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, one of the main reasons why my department has been actively engaging the recognized community leadership of Kolweni, it is specifically for the reason to give them an update of why the contractor who they ultimately had a walkabout on site couldn't start immediately. We gave them the reasons, we gave them also how it will affect this project, which they ultimately accepted because the recognized leadership of Kolweni are sick and tired of politics being played with this specific housing project, Honorable Speaker. As soon as this matter is resolved in court, and I'm happy to report that I believe it will be quite soon resolved, we will see the contractor, which ultimately we have now appointed or put in place as a provincial department, go on to site. He has engaged the leadership. We have assessed the economic opportunities which will benefit the local community because they have gone through a process while we were on site with the contractor to ultimately ensure, Honorable Speaker, that there is no further delays and we catch up on lost time. A realistic project timeline has been formulated. It has been structured by the contractor which we have now put in place as a provincial department. That we will keep them accountable to that specific timeline, and we will consistently communicate with the specific community leadership and those qualifying beneficiaries who will be finally gain access to this opportunity, Honorable Speaker. So in essence, the recognized leadership do know what's happening. It's only those that will now suddenly start popping up once we see movement on site that will be possibly the reason for anything happening. But ultimately, as members of this House, we encourage that we work through recognized leadership in the interest of all our people. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, that concludes this particular question. I will take the next question. We've got limited time, but we'll proceed to the next question, number 5, by Honorable Makamba Boja to the Honorable Minister of Health. I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. I will be short. Thank you for the question, Member Makamba Boja. Noting that to compare the first wave and the third wave, it becomes difficult, taking note that in the third wave, there was a variant, and the first wave, there was no variant that was identified. But in terms of the numbers, hospitalization, also need to understand that we are not including PUIs, which is the persons under investigations, and those that are in the specialized hospitals other than where they're supposed to be in the main hospitals. So in terms of the numbers, the peak for admissions in the first wave, that was on the 30th of June. There were 1,292 patients in public facilities. And then when it comes to adding with the private hospitals using a 7-day moving average, there were 1,829. Just to be able to compare apples with apples, I'm also including the information on the second wave, although you asked for the first and the third wave. For the second wave, which was the peak, was in 3rd January, there were 2,179 patients hospitalized, and then 3,000 out of those, in the public. And then for the 7-day moving average, when you add public and the private, there was about 3,523. And then for currently, which is on the 11th of August, there are roughly about 2,069 patients hospitalized in the public facilities. But when you add with the private, there's about 3,665 patients that have been hospitalized. Noting at this stage, we don't have confirmation whether we've reached the peak or not. But from the 4th of August, we have seen the plateauing. And also we know that, especially now we're coming from the long weekend, hospitalization, if there are any people who have probably been infected during this time because of the long weekend and cluster infections, people don't normally get hospitalized immediately within the few days after being diagnosed. So it can take longer. But we do have a confirmation of about 34% chances that we might reach the peak. Previously, we had about 27% chances, so it might keep on changing. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Makamba Boja.
And thank you to the Minister for her response. Minister, I just want to find out, when you're making a comparison with the trends in numbers of COVID-19 infections from the first wave in 2020 to date, can it be readily said that the province has fulfilled the promise of instilling a prevention behavior with regards to COVID-19 infection, as was outlined by the Premier in the State of the Province address earlier this year? And I'm not sure if Somloma should ask the second question or should I wait for the Minister to respond?
Rather wait for the Honorable Minister to respond. I recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Noting the pandemic will always differ and mirror itself differently. We're talking about the pandemic, which is still is in the overseas, yet we find that they've got more than 60% of their population vaccinated. And also in the context of South Africa, for example, the second wave, the epicenter was in the Eastern Cape, and then followed by us, and then the KZN. In the third wave, the epicenter or the third wave started in the Free State. Northern Cape has never left any wave. It has been on wave throughout. Northwest, Gauteng, and the Western Cape, even within the Western Cape, out of the 5 district rural district, also within the metro, there are 8 sub-districts, we find that it mirrors differently. Just making an example, Khayelitsha still has got the lowest infection rate, yet is the one that had a higher number of affected in the first wave. So the question is about whether we have managed to contain. Remember, for us as health, it's about when we ended up, like saying, mopping the floor, when the people who have been infected outside the health system. People get infected in the funerals, in their homes, among the family members themselves, at work, whether in the restaurant. So it's beyond the health system. So the question about whether we'll be able to manage, we don't know. That question is supposed to be put out there. But the most important question, as a health system, have we managed to be able to be ready in regard to the hospital beds, in regard to the oxygen, in regard to the staffing, in regard to even collecting the data? Yes, up to the level that we have got the warning indicators where we could be able to see if there are so many infections, if there is a 40% or 25% of our beds that are being occupied by COVID. If out of a hospital, maybe 40% of our hospitals are affected, what is that we need to trigger? Do we trigger where we would be able to say that let's add more beds? For example, we've got more beds that are even not utilized now.
Who is that now? Okay.
I finished speaking.
Members, Minister, my apologies. Somebody was talking whilst you're talking, and I apologize for that. We may proceed.
Hayi, ndigqibile uphendula.
Oh, ugqibile.
Ewe, Somlomo, enkosi.
All right, Ngcuba. Now let's proceed with Honorable Makamba Bhodja. She wanted to ask a last follow-up.
Enkosi Somlomo, ndizawucela uthetha isiXhosa. Ndifuna ubuza phaa kuMinister. When I spoke about prevention behavior, she made mention indaba yobana iscope sabo limited kwinto ze-bed and stuff and medication and so on. But I want to also find out from the Minister, are there any outreach programs that the Department of Education have embarked on to make sure that they instill the prevention behavior as it was mentioned? And secondly, I just want to also find out the so-called 19 hotspot strategy introduced by the Western Cape Provincial Government. Has it been that has been tried and tested since the first wave of the infection? Now, with regards to the rapid increase of the infection during the third wave, can the strategy be said to be effective, Minister? Thank you.
Yes. Dependula Somlomo.
Thank you, Honorable Makamba Bhodja. Abengizothetha isiXhosa. That's isiXhosa sitshintshile. Honorable Minister, you may proceed.
Enkosi Somlomo, i-hotspot isaqhubekeka, and each and every hotspot is being coordinated by a member of the cabinet. Just making an example, Central Karoo by MEC Schaefer, Garden Route by Simmers, Klepfontein, Mitchell's Plain by Fernandez, Ivescus by MEC Upredel, Southern and Western by MEC Michelle, and so forth. So, and then Overberg, of course, by member Umenia. So it's still continuing about that. Remember, the only way, at the time without vaccination, the only way for maintain or to stop the spread is about non-pharmaceutical interventions. Mask. That one, as we know that now that the country now has got a regulation where people can be fined for not wearing a mask, or even in a workplace or any place if they allow people without mask. Washing your hands, sanitizer, avoiding crowded places, avoiding gatherings, avoiding places where there's a poor ventilation. Those things are supposed to be happening outside, which is including us as the members of the communities, community leaders. When there are funerals, we know that the funerals are the sources of where there's a high, there might be high infection rate. And in some cases, the issue when we said stay in a bubble, it was about when we have seen people being infected within the families. So it's part of where each and every department, each and every government, spheres of government, which is also every member of the society, there was a whole of society approach. It needs everyone. So indeed, all the departments are still doing that. Every Wednesday, we have got extended cabinet where the district mayors and also their city managers, municipal managers, they also participate and present what is happening in the also in their districts. So I'm not sure when you speak about Department of Education, it was a mistake, but as I'm saying, Noba, all the departments, they are getting involved in regard to that space. Hotspot strategy is not only about the health response, but it's also about the humanitarian, the issues on the dignity, the issue on the role played by the faith-based organization, and all others. So yes, indeed, it needs all of us. Now, lastly, Somlomo, to going towards possibly fourth wave. Now we've got vaccines. Hence, again, we appeal to everyone to ensure Ugogo, Utamkulu gets vaccinated. That's why we encourage people, community leaders, to be influencers, even us as the constituency heads, as the members of parliament. You need to make a short in terms of social mobilization so that we bring people not only for the vaccination, but to make use of the vaccination site, because we find that other vaccination sites are open. We open even for the weekends, even during this 9th of March, the holiday. But we find that people were not utilizing it as much as that we publish it in our Facebook pages.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I've got the next two honorable members, Honorable Van Vogel and Honorable Philander. I will now recognize Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to check with the MEC whether a testing strategy that is open to everyone in society would have helped the province to better respond to the spread by testing, tracing, and all contexts of positive cases. And if so, why is the government not opening testing to everyone? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Order, honorable members. Let us not unmute ourselves if we have not been recognized. I now recognize the honorable minister.
Thank you for the question. The knowing your COVID status in the context when there's a high level of community transmission, it's discouraged. That is the research based. And if you go to the WHO, they will tell you in terms of the different phases or stages of the pandemic. For example, when it has got fewer people, that's when you want to know how many people who are infected. If you recall, even with the with the disaster management regulations during the lockdown level 5, 4 at the beginning of last year, you find that it was about, we wanted to ensure that any district that has got 5% or 5 more of the positive cases, we could be able to put them on the alert. So at the time, it was about know your COVID status. But now when there's a high level of a community transmission, where actually by default, it means that almost everyone is positive. The issue of ended up doing the mass testing, it will have a huge impact also on the lab because we're not controlling the lab. I mentioned the PUIs, which is the persons under investigations. People will go to the hospital, like earlier we spoke about the queues that are happening outside our health facilities. It means that some of those people might end up needing to be tested. Just now imagine, especially our experience in the first wave, where the results, people will even receive their results a week or even 2 weeks later, after that person actually probably will have even completed the quarantine and isolation. So one part of it is about evidence-based. When there's a community transmission, you focus on the vulnerable. So the vulnerable, according to the evidence, is about those people who are older, which we have seen now. We have seen 68% of the over 50s as part of the hospital admissions, and also about 87% of the deaths are the people who are over 50. Therefore, we said over 40, that's when we can prioritize because you are vulnerable, you are at high risk. And then those people who might be younger but who have got comorbidities, to prioritize them so that to protect the health system, because it's no use to say to the bundle, go and test it because you've been exposed. So they will inform the person, go and isolate and quarantine, because you don't want a situation when these PUIs are at the hospital, you cannot take the patient and refer to the next level, or you cannot be even take the patient to the COVID ward because you don't know the person's status. So you avoid a situation of managing the patients in the corridors because you don't know their status. So you want a turnaround where you could be able to make it way to be able to manage and send them all over. But again, the whole issue is about, it's a community transmission, always focus on the vulnerable. And then lastly, it's the same thing, we're talking about the vaccination, where you say equitable access. In as much as that there might be AMA 35, or even now, 1st of September, there will be AMA 18s that will want to come for having vaccines. But for us, it's about what is the use. When we have the older persons, where we know that they are high risk, are being left behind. Let's go to those farms, let's go to those homeless, let's go to all of those, because these are the people who ended up clogging the system. So it's the same thing with the testing. Lastly, testing has got nothing to do with about that we have got high numbers. What we know is about yes, the numbers are not a reflection, case is not a reflection, but the issue is about what is a positivity rate. So even if you could test about 100 or 200, but what is the positivity rate, which at this stage, I think is still about 40%, but it keeps on decreasing, especially now that we've seen the number of the cases are plateauing. Also, the issue of the deaths, not only deaths that are happening in the health facilities, but that are happening outside with the data that we also get from the MRC. Also with the issue of the oxygen utilization, which provides us and part of the indicators to know where are we when it comes to a pandemic. And then lastly with the Q&Is, remember with the community high-level transmission, that's when we find that the household, like I think it was in Overberg, in Austin, where the clusters were a result of infections among the families. So if now we have had the birthday party of your 21-year-old as a family, and then there are 3 are infected, it means you are likely that you are all infected, though you may as well isolate all together. But if there is an OMA or an OPA or anyone who's a high risk, that's the person that will be focused on. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am going to allow Honourable Philander to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Through you to Minister Mbombo. Minister, what measures were put in place by the Western Cape Health Department to avert a possible collapse in the public health system? And were there ever such a threat due to patient admissions? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Go ahead, Deputy Speaker.
You may respond, Minister.
I didn't hear the first part of the question, but the issue of the long queues and all of those, as I indicated earlier, is part of the prevention strategy, so that you don't end up having people who get infected, not only in our infected among themselves, but also not to expose the healthcare workers to be infected. So it is our role to ensure, just like even in our facilities, when we said no visitors, we want to protect the patient, we also want to protect the staff. It has been part of this. And also secondly, we always make announcement when we have to decongregate or even to decongest, and then we always highlight what kind of health services that we're decongregating. For example, at the primary healthcare, we once said, when we said Vulimpilo, that the issue of the immunizations, the pregnant women, those who have got appointments to see the doctor, those ones, you cannot be able to say, no, go away. We'll still have to part of that. So, but in issue of the operations, elective surgeries, which is actually, it was the private that started that way. They say they got unable to take more of the elective surgeries. We made sure and identify by each discipline. Medicine has got about 8 disciplines, 7 or 8 disciplines, where each and every sector discipline will say, for the child cancer or for the breast cancers at the Grooteskier, you won't be able to do this type of the operations and all of those. So generally, we have to come up with a strategy without necessarily that will impact on the patients themselves. Sadly, this is part of how the system works in regard to where you have to protect the system, plus also to prioritize the pandemic. Ideally for me, it should be after this COVID, if there will be after COVID, there shouldn't be a service that ended up being postponed or disturbed. The system should be able to say, we are managing the COVID or managing the pandemic, whatever pandemic it is, we still continue with the others, because at the end, you ended up having some of the patients who would probably have need more of these operations, interventions, but they are unable to. So ideally, that's how things are. But unfortunately, this is the context where we are now. And if you go to GSH, for example, you see how it works, that it's no longer where if you have been placed in an outpatient, and then it's quiet, and then there's a high level of a need for staff, may say in the COVID or in the pediatric wards, but you cannot be able to there. That's why people say that, but my surgeon or my whatever doesn't have patients. They forget that even if you are an orthopedic surgeon or whatever, if you need be, you have to go to the places where you are being needed. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. That actually brings us to the end of questions. We now move over to questions to the Premier without notice in terms of Rule 204. I'd like to just apologise for the slight misprint on the order paper, but we are moving directly to questions to the Premier without notice. We just to remind our members that we have 2 follow-ups, and the member that posed the question gets the first opportunity to follow up. I recognise the Honourable Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair. Premier, in 2007, the Western Cape government, under the DA control then, embarked on a project at Saldanha called the Yalisi Culture Indigenous Snail Farming Project. The project was intended to form part of a poverty eradication initiative spearheaded by the Department of Social Development, and it was intended to create an estimate 200 direct jobs and generate 28.5 million rand in revenue for our province. 3 million rand was spent on a feasibility study, and Betty Hector, the then project manager, claimed the snails would be bred in tunnels or batteries, breeding 35 million snails per annum when in full production. They said there was a great demand overseas for snails, especially from France, where there was a market for between 40,000 and 48,000 tons of these brown indigenous snails. Premier, what happened? What happened to this project? Can you tell me if you are aware of it and what happened to it, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Premier.
Something. The Premier's mic is off.
Can you hear me yet?
1 minute.
The mic is on.
The mic is on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
I can hear you now, Premier.
Thank you very much, Honourable Murray.
Thank you very much, Honourable Murray. Wow, I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, in 2007, we were in government from 2010. So if I was in that cabinet, I might remember it, but not right down to the detail that you're talking about, 40 to 58,000 tons, etc., etc. So really, I can't, I can't really answer that question. You'd have to put it into proper writing. We'd have to go back into the archives and have a look. What I do know is that, in visiting Saldanha Bay, I don't see that project running. But of course, I know that you were maybe the Premier at that stage, but I'm unfortunately unable to give you the detail on that answer. If you put it in writing, I will definitely do the research and be able to get back to you on that.
Honourable Murray.
Premier, thank you. No, I wasn't Premier at that time. I don't make balls ups like that. What I want to ask you, Premier, if you do your research, and I'm sure you will as an astute businessman, and you find that this is feasible or this could be salvaged, would you consider to make it part of your economic recovery plan in the Western Cape? Would you consider it? The money that was mentioned at the time was very attractive. 28.5 million income for the province is not something to scoff at. So will you, if you have done your homework on this issue, and I'm not blaming you, that's why I say it was under DA government control. I didn't know that, I know you were not then Premier, but the DA was in 2007 in control. No. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier.
First of all, thank you very much for the follow-up question. Honourable Member, I remember getting to this very house in in 1999. It was quite a long time ago. And in 1999 and 2000, there was a coalition. And then that coalition fell. And definitely not in 2007. The DA was definitely not in control in this province. That is incorrect. But while you were asking that question, I quickly had a look and to see what kind of snail farming projects there were. And I can't really pick anything up, but I can pick up a Google search that mentions exactly the same one that you are talking about in 2007. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if there is the possibility, whether it's snail farming, fish farming, aquaculture, all of those things, you know, obviously, if anything is a viable proposition, we would look at it, how to support it. Also, just to confirm that we weren't in government, because at the stage then, the MEC was MEC Kuleka Mkorwana, and she was a member of the ANC at that stage, and she was the MEC that launched that project. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister Fritz, I see your hand is up.
Just a point of order, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The DA only came into power in 2009, and so that was a corrupt ANC government who was in power.
Thank you, Minister Fritz. That's not a point of order, but you kindly answered that question, even though it has no relevance to his present term.
And ANC MEC Fritz was a member of at some point.
Okay, order. We will now move over to Honourable Allen.
I thought I had 3 questions.
Honourable Murray, you do have one extra one.
Thank you. I will just make use
that it's of relevance.
Thank you. I just want to say to the Premier, that explains everything why it is a failure. I didn't know who was in charge, but that explains everything.
Is that your comment, Honourable Murray?
That is my comment, yes, lady.
Thank you. The Premier may respond.
Thank you very much. Perhaps also just to the honourable member that I do notice, and sorry, I've just done a quick search, but I do notice that there is a snail farm. It is actually at Rondevlei in the wilderness area, in the garden route area, that is busy with snail farming at the moment, organic snail farming. So there is obviously some snail farming that's going on. And of course, if it is viable, I'm sure it's something that our agricultural department would definitely support. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. We now move over to Honourable Allen.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Premier, in our country and in various communities, crime levels are increasing. And when policing is not supported in numbers, not only are residents at risk, but SAPS itself. My question is whether the Premier is able to brief the House or fill the House in with regard to measures taken against the failure of national government pertaining to the intergovernmental dispute with regard to the public needs and priorities in the Western Cape, reference to the South African Police Service, to better safety responses here in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much, Honourable Allen, for that question. And perhaps it leads on quite nicely to the interpellation that was earlier in the House. It was quite interesting for me when we talk about the P&P or the needs and priorities, the policing needs and priorities in our province, of which Minister Fritz published the document not so long ago. It is a key document, and that really goes to show the oversight role of the existing constitutional framework that we find ourselves in. I mean, I think, Honourable Allen, and of course, you know, I'm answering this question when, I mean, the detail obviously would be a detailed question to Member Fritz, but I did hold that position prior to becoming Premier. Becoming Premier, I held that position that Minister Fritz holds at the moment. And I mean, then the reason that there was a dispute coming out of this document, but also coming out of general oversight, was that we have too few police officers in our province to population ratios compared to the norm across South Africa. We also, I believe that, we have got some very serious crime issues that we face specifically in this province. And then because of that, we should actually have extra police resourcing to this province. We should, especially around murders and gangsterism, gang-related crimes, gender-based violence issues, I believe we shouldn't just have less per capita than other provinces. We should have more per capita than other provinces because per capita we have higher murders. There might be more murders that take place in KZN and Gauteng than the Western Cape in actual numbers every year, but per capita our numbers are worse, and we should have then therefore higher or greater numbers of police officers deployed. I was actually reading something the other day that was showing that in actual fact we have less police officers now than we had in 2018. And then of course in 2019 was when we started that intergovernmental dispute. I know that Minister Fritz and Minister Bekele actually started to negotiate and try and find some agreement around getting extra deployment. But at the same time, what we're trying to do in the province is bolster those numbers as well. And that's of course a part of the safety plan, which is those extra deployed LEAP officers that we are putting into those hot spots at the moment across the province where people are so unsafe. I think in that interpellation, the honourable member himself mentioned walking in Delft. I was in Delft the other day, engaging with the citizens and engaging with the neighbourhood watchers as well as the LEAP officers and SAPs themselves. I listened to that debate earlier, and it was quite interesting how even honourable members in this House think that SAPs and the LEAP officers are not getting on. It was interesting that the brigadier that was there at the walkabout, who was from Kraaifontein, was saying how jealous she was as a station commander because she hadn't had deployment yet, but she is getting deployment into Kraaifontein because it's moving into those hotspot areas and it's bolstering the police. And that's what we need to do. I think, as you said, honourable member, when our numbers start to drop so low that even police officers themselves have got so few people on their shifts. I know in Philippi the other day, there was a call that I got because people were calling for police and the one vehicle they had already gone out into the agricultural area of Philippi. And so suddenly, and that only had one police officer in the vehicle, and the other police officer in the station couldn't leave the station to get to help a citizen that was in deep, deep trouble. This kind of deployment is absolutely unacceptable. And of course, I am not leading that, but Minister Fritz is, and we actually need to look at getting that dispute up and running again. I mean, our population ratio to police officers is absolutely out. I think it's just over 200 population to police officer ratio is what the UN say should be the norm. And of course, we know in some areas of our city in Cape Town, it's probably closer to 1,000 members of public to a police officer. And the interesting thing is those are the hotspots. And in actual fact, we should have deployment to those hotspots. But, I mean, we don't control the South African police services. They're controlled by Bekele, the national government, and they can make a decision on deployment on where police officers are deployed or not. And I don't understand why they don't make that decision. It's so easy. Just make it and say, this is the ratio, where is it over that, and move people to the hotspot areas. But no, they don't do that, and they still haven't done that year after year after year. I mean, it's absolutely unacceptable. And of course, the other day, it was the police commissioner at the National Assembly who said, quite frankly, right now, with South African police services, they cannot offer South Africans the service and the safety that they deserve within the Constitution. I mean, that is an absolute indictment. So if anything, we should actually be looking at devolution of power, which is what I campaigned on, and I believe exactly what should happen in our country and this province, but I believe it should happen in other provinces too.
Thank you, Premier. Honourable Allen.
Thank you, Premier. Part of the Premier's end remarks was I would have asked around would we support the decentralization of SAP. So I'm delighted to hear the Premier's remarks in that regard. But Premier, are you able to inform the House and citizens of the Western Cape following the recent unrest in KZN and in Gauteng, we saw clear errors in the preparation from SAPS's side. Are you able to fill in the House as well as members of the Western Cape on what are some of the measures that this government undertook to prevent instances of looting here in the Western Cape in the absence of national government? Thank you.
Thanks, Premier.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member, for that question or follow-up. Yeah. I think you said that I touched on the devolution, but I'll maybe say a little bit more about that and then get on to our preparedness. I really do believe that devolution should be something that we should focus on. I think what has been said now in the National Assembly is now saying to us that we need to really start pushing for that again, engaging with other provinces to back us on this idea. I believe it should be that way. We should have national government that controls an oversight over regions that have the deployment, and that in actual fact, it also shouldn't be one single force. It should be a devolved force. And at the moment, we see the opposite happening from a policy point of view at a national level, where you still see the driving force to say that in actual fact, we should have a single rank system, that all municipal police, municipal law enforcement, provincial traffic, you name it, should all be under one police leadership and one police department. I definitely think that wouldn't work. And that probably leads me into answering the second part of your question. And that is what we did in this province when we saw what was happening in other parts of South Africa. And I think obviously as we saw sadly what was happening in Gauteng and KZN, we obviously had to make sure that we were mitigating risk. I remember on the Sunday, we could see it starting to happen. We were checking on our road systems, making sure, because we didn't want to see the same thing with trucks being burnt out. I remember the engagements with General Patekile, our provincial police commissioner, and perhaps use this opportunity in this house to say to him, thank you very much. As our police commissioner, I mean, of course, he's in charge. The system works that way. Even our LEAP officers, everybody falls under that JOC system. And General Patekile, I want to say to you, thank you very much for the way in which you led us through that time. I know that on that Monday, we started the discussions with the General, but also with our own traffic department, our own with the city, with the law enforcement, with our neighborhood watchers across the province. We very quickly set up an expanded cabinet, which is the provincial cabinet, and it's the same structure that we put in place to manage COVID-19. We put that structure in place to manage this mitigation of risk, as you call it. And so we had the expanded cabinet that included the whole of the provincial government cabinet and heads of department. It included all of the district municipal managers and mayors. It included the disaster management teams, the city, the law enforcement within the city. It also included the General, Patekile, and his team, led obviously through DOCS, who would be the agent and Minister Fritz. That expanded cabinet then looked again at our readiness, made sure that each of those districts were again between the local governments and their station commanders and police were working together. But primarily it was also saying, how do we coordinate and communicate with the neighborhood watchers, private security, and citizens of the province. And here again, I need to use this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you to everybody from the faith-based organizations, the business sector, the international relations teams, the citizens on the ground, neighborhood watchers. Everybody stood together with our policing, whether they were law enforcement, traffic, SAPs, POPs, and of course we also got that week deployment of military. And every single day that week, or for 7 days, we held a cabinet meeting every single day where we got a report back on where we were. We also had a meeting where cabinet myself, Minister Fritz met and Minister Mania met with business. We had a meeting, Minister Mayor pulled it together with the faith-based organizations. These two also systems that we work in COVID-19 management. We met with all of the consul generals and ambassadors so we could keep them sort of briefed for their own citizens that are here in the region, but also for the interests of their investors, people who wanted to know what was happening in this region and our readiness. Of course, every single day we held those. It lasted for 7 days until we could slow it down. But even right now, for example, on Wednesday morning, Minister Fritz and the team pulled in through the provincial jog that happens in the morning, briefs cabinet on exactly where we are with the threats analysis, etc. Because of course we need to make sure, as representatives of the citizens of this province and as the elected executive, that we are playing that role of pulling people together to make sure that we keep things safe, that we protect ourselves. And perhaps lastly, to say that again to the citizens of this province, across this province, from every corner of this province, citizens stood up and said, not here, and stood together to make sure that we mitigated that risk. And of course, dealt with all of the fake news, but dealt with all of the risks coming through and made sure we mitigated. And yeah, I think it showed that our system that we put in place to manage COVID-19, which was used again for the management of this risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Premier. There's another follow-up with you, Honourable Allen.
I am covered, Deputy Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of questions to the Premier without notice. Our time is up. We will now move on to statements by members in terms of Rule 145. I recognise the DA.
Deputy Speaker, the Institute for Security Studies attributes the overall decrease of 5% in the matric pass rate for the class of 2020 to the causality of the pandemic, and that school attendance in adhering to COVID-19 protocols has wiped out strides made in the development over the last decade. Many schools are unable to accommodate a full return of learners as anticipated for quarters 3 and 4. At the start of the year, DBE noted that 15% of learners could not be recounted for the new year in the system. During 2020, it is estimated that learners between grades 7 and 12 in South Africa had lost 30 to 60 school days. However, I want to commend teachers for taking up their posts daily. Many teach the same lesson twice. Deputy Speaker, the work teachers do under these restraints must be commended and supported. It is further estimated that the dropout rate under the current trajectory of absenteeism due to COVID-19 could reduce the country's GDP by $2.6 billion. And so I want to commend the swift vaccination program by the WCED to increase safety measures at schools, but even more for the work done to support teacher catch-up and new learning plans. Deputy Speaker, I take courage of the story of a young man in Delft who dropped out of school to support his family as job losses severely hit many households last year. But thanks to the outreach of teachers, he realized that to further his career successfully, he needs to complete his matric and has then returned to school. Education is an integral part in building human capital, social cohesion, and is a significant contributor to sustainable development. Therefore, teachers and learners require the decisive support from government against the compound damage that COVID-19 continues to pose to teachers and learners. I nonetheless acknowledge the resilience portrayed by every stakeholder, especially teachers, to ensure qualitative education in the Western Cape. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Botha. I now recognise the ANC.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As our country commemorates the 1956 Women's March and Women's Month, the ANC once again wishes to note the urgent need to pursue the quest for gender transformation within the agriculture sector and on the question of land. As the country debates and discusses the concept of expropriation of land without compensation, we must take note of the following. The fact that while women may contribute to 60 to 80% of the labor force in sub-Saharan Africa, they only receive 10% of available credit in South Africa. According to the 2020 Stats SA report, there are only 8,000 women landowners who farm for themselves, this compared to 31,000 men. According to the Economic Research Southern Africa think tank, I quote, open quote, agriculture contributes to food security of female-headed more than male-headed households, especially in rural areas, close quote. According to the Commission on Employment Equity 2021 report, only 18% of top management in the agriculture, forestry, and fishing sectors are women, compared to 82% of men in these positions. Only 4% of this 18% of top management being women are Black women, African, colored, and Indian. But of the 82% of men in top management in the sector, 72% are white males, confirming that agriculture is a white man's territory. According to a 2020 study co-funded by the Provincial Department of Agriculture, as well as the Sustainability Initiative of South Africa, only 21% of farms in the Western Cape were owned by women. It is therefore imperative, as President Ramaphosa stated in his Women's Day address, that women must benefit from the recent relief measures as well as the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. We hope that this provincial government, and in particular the Department of Agriculture, will prioritize the empowerment of women landowners and women farmers. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. I recognize the EFF.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The EFF calls on the Western Cape Department of Education to pull its weight and start to eradicate all forms of bullying and racism in the Western Cape public schools. This follows the latest incident of racism and bullying, which took place at Tableview High School, where a group of white learners forcefully took a cell phone belonging to a Black learner without his will. Deputy Speaker, upon demanding his cell phone back, the white learner started assaulting the owner of the cell phone whilst they were surrounded by other white learners who are friends with the perpetrator. The EFF further condemns the role played by the school management, who turned a blind eye when this incident was first reported to them, and only reacted later when videos started circulating on social media and in the public domain, resulting in a widespread public rebuke. In the modern day and era, as society, we cannot tolerate school management who ignore instances of bullying and racism just because the victim is a Black child. Such individuals should hold no positions in our schools and no place in our society, and should therefore be relieved of their duties with immediate effect. Deputy Speaker, a school that does not teach learners that there is no room for bullying and racism in the current dispensation is not a school at all, and a department that does not encourage schools to do so remain dysfunctional and rotten to the core. I thank you, Speaker. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I recognise the DA.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. In this Women's Month, I celebrate all women in the Western Cape for continuing to break barriers and helping to create a society where the worth of women is being recognized. We know that there is nothing that an empowered woman cannot achieve, and so it is a point of pride and priority of the Western Cape government to promote the interests of the women so that they might be able to reach their full potential. The Department of Human Settlements has made a conscious decision to consistently invest in the women in the built environment. In fact, it has been a strategic objective of the department since 2014 to broaden economic participation by ensuring that women-owned construction companies have their share of development opportunities. In only 3 years, departmental projects alone accounted for nearly 139 million rand spent on projects spearheaded by women-owned companies in Western Cape. This excludes projects by the City of Cape Town and non-metro municipalities in the province, which make use of women-owned construction companies. The department actively seeks to empower women through awareness campaigns, working close with South African women in construction for several years, and by training women in the sector. In the 2020-21 financial year, the department has indicated that they have surpassed their target and 14.68% of the Human Settlements Development Grant has been paid to women contractors, empowering them and their businesses. The women of the Western Cape need a government that recognizes their potential and creates an environment that will see them thrive. The Department of Human Settlements is making this a reality. I commend all women for breaking barriers and encourage them to continue taking up the space as we celebrate this Women's Month. Mbogoto, I salute you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I recognise Good. No. Right, I'm going to move on to the ACDP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, a lot was said about safety today in the House, but it seems one thing that is overlooked is that most and many of our communities live in darkness. The ACDP calls on the Western Cape government to engage the local authorities when it comes to the failure to service the streetlights in communities where crime is rife. Streetlights in our townships are a deterrent in most vulnerable communities to combat crime. Streetlights, by its very function, must light up our streets. We cannot call it streetlights because it's not able to light up our streets. When the streets are lit, communities feel safe, or should I say safer. I challenge anyone to walk in a township at night when the street lights are out. I challenge anyone to walk in an informal settlement of this province at night and feel safe in the darkness. Some of our communities utilize outside toilet facilities, and it's extremely dangerous, especially when the areas are dark at night. Deputy Speaker, streetlights promote security and safety. Streetlights also inspire confidence communities and they feel safer. Deputy Speaker, as the ACDP, we are not asking for additional streetlights. We are not asking for special favors. All that we are asking is that local government must play its role so that the light can light up the areas where they are positioned. Evil blossoms in darkness. Darkness allows evil to spread and mushroom. Just this morning, I got a phone call again to say that a man sleeping in his house, the lights was out, and they burgled his house. And when he stood up, they shot him. Fortunately, he did not die. But this happens in our townships every day. So the plea from the ACDP is to ask this government to engage local authorities to have the lights serviced in the most vulnerable areas. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Christians. I now recognise the ANC.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the ANC's unwavering commitment to redressing apartheid spatial planning patterns and building of inclusionary housing in the inner city received a big boost after the National Department of Human Settlement, the Housing Development Agency, and the SAPC reached an agreement regarding the acquisition of the SAPC Rocklands building in Sea Point, which has halted the sale of the building to private developers. The leader of the opposition in the legislature, Honorable Comrade Cameron Dugmore, deserved the credit for this. When the building was advertised for sale in an online auction, he took an initiative to start a dialogue between the various stakeholders for the building to remain in the hands of the state and for it to be used to construct integrated social housing in the inner city. This process culminated in the court interdict of the sale of the building in May this year. The ANC once again commends the former Minister of Human Settlement, Comrade Lindiwe Sisulu, for championing this genuine cause to ensure that state and parastatal buildings are not auctioned off to private developers. Instead, they are used to construct integrated social housing. This is an injunction on the provincial government led by the Democratic Alliance in this province to follow suit by releasing the Tafelberg site to be used for inclusionary housing and build a truly non-racial society. The ANC applauds all stakeholders, in particular the National Department of Human Settlement, the HDA, and the SAPC for the role they play to arrive at this watershed moment in the history of our democracy. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And now recognise the DA.
Deputy Speaker, exactly 1 week ago, the Special Investigation Unit announced that it would launch an investigation into the National Department of Water and Sanitation. The reason for this? Allegations of maladministration and corruption to the tune of 474 million in tenders issued between 2012 and 2017. Unfortunately, this is not a singular event that has tainted this department. In a reply to a written question from the NCOP, the Deputy President revealed that construction work at the Glenwilliam Dam project was only standing at 12%. After originally being allocated 2 billion rand as far back as 2014, it means that there's been 7 years of constant delays in upgrading critical infrastructure. Initial progress was so slow that the project had to be relaunched in 2018. The intended upgrades will increase the dam wall height by 13 meters and would more than double its water capacity. It means an extra 5,500 hectares of land would be able to receive irrigation. Speaker, the consequences of these delays that an additional 3,500 sustainable full-time jobs can't be created. This number excludes seasonal jobs and additional jobs downstream in the value chain. Within the same written reply, the Deputy President also disclosed that the Development Bank of South Africa could be used as an implementing agent due to the department being unable to procure critical materials and contractors. These events are not only an indictment of the ANC's incompetence to properly govern, but also its blatant carelessness about real socio-economic change. No changing of tech chairs or separation of departments will improve the situation and address the corruption and poor service delivery under President Ramaphosa. It's time that the national government seriously addresses corruption and maladministration. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognise the Freedom Front Plus.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Freedom Front Plus, having listened to President Ramaphosa's weak-kneed responses to direct questions asked of him before the Zondo Commission, the shameless evidence of cover-ups of rampant corruption at cabinet level, and having listened to the factionalism in the ANC, are now more than ever committed to fighting for the Western Cape's constitutional independence. We are now more than ever convinced this is the only option left to ensure the socio-economic and constitutional survival of our province. We therefore call on the members of this House and citizens of the Western Cape to support our call for federal autonomy, because the competency levels of cabinet ministers and the deputies are questionably not on standard, and the country is heading for the abyss, an ever worsening gulf between the peoples of this country. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognise Al Jamal.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we salute the women of 9th August 1956 who stood up against an unjust system. May you be a continuous inspiration to all women all around the world, especially in Africa and Palestine, Kashmir, Rohingya, who continue to resist colonialism and imperialism. As we commemorate and celebrate Women's Month, let it be an opportunity to reflect on achievements in women's empowerment and on the daily struggles of women against landlessness, gangsterism, drugs, homelessness, evictions from farms, gender-based violence, and unemployment. Many countries have reported significant progress in women's empowerment in both the private and public sectors. In our country too, we see more women are graduating and some finding employment or holding positions in businesses and politics. But despite making up just over half of the population, women remain unrepresented in positions of authority and power. The Beijing Platform of Action, adopted at the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women in 1995, focused on 12 areas of concern about women. Of these areas of concerns, the South African government prioritized 5, but due to time constraints, I will mention only 2. Women and economic empowerment, women and decision making. Women are underrepresented in the corporate world, especially in the technology sector. The World Economic Forum ranked in South Africa 19th overall in terms of gender gap equality, with a slight decline in gender wage equality, where the country has ranked 117th from 114th in 2017. The WEF also raised their concerns for a more diverse representation in boardrooms throughout corporate South Africa. Women must be enabled to succeed in the marketplace, as society can benefit largely from women's talents and skills. Many women are the breadwinners of their families.
Thank you very much. A little bit over, but not a problem. Thank you very much. I now recognize the DA.
Afternoon, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Almost 2 months ago, I was part of a delegation from the Western Cape Legislature which conducted an oversight visit to the South African Police Services Forensic Science Laboratory in Plattekloof. It was here that it was brought to our attention that the robotics machines used in the processing of DNA samples relating to gender-based violence cases have been out of order since 2019. Deputy Speaker, in the first 3 months of this year alone, 9,158 people were raped in the country, of which 1,094 cases occurred in the Western Cape. This is just over 100 cases a day on average nationally and 12 a day on average in this province, provincially. We can no longer allow this to go on as if it's normal. When speaking on gender-based violence, Minister Pekile rightfully called the statistic shameful. Yet his own government has done nothing to fix the robotics machines at the SAPS facility, where gender-based violence cases can be fast-tracked. As we speak, many victims of GBV still do not have justice as a result of this. A classic case of our national government providing lip service but no political solutions, and especially during Women's Month. Deputy Speaker, last month I wrote to the Commission for Gender Equality to investigate these out-of-order robotics machines, because it is clear that the national government is either too lazy or just plain incompetent to effect the proper change without us as a province putting pressure on them. We hope that the findings by the Commission for Gender Equality will force national government to initiate this process to fix these machines to ensure that victims of gender-based violence get the justice they deserve. Whilst we wait for our incompetent national government to come on board, we have to commend the Western Cape Provincial Department of Social Development for stepping up where those at national have failed. The Provincial Department runs several shelters for survivors of gender-based violence. It facilitates a successful victim empowerment program in collaboration with NGOs, as well as ensures that more than 30 social workers are dedicated to work in GBV hotspots, including Khayelitsha, Philippi, Gugulethu, Delft, Mitchell's Plain, and Atlantis. It is this type of care and awareness that is needed by a government to address the second pandemic. We do hope that the President and Minister Cele comes to the
Thank
party
you.
and capacitates SAPS urgently. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bosman. That brings us to the end of statements. In terms of Rule 145.6, I now give one or more members of the Executive an opportunity to respond to any of the members' statements. Are there any ministers who would like to respond? I recognise Honourable Minister Schaefer.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. I would just like to respond to the EFF statement, the ongoing lies that they continue to perpetrate in respect of the incident of Tableview High School. They like to see a racist incident behind every corner and not every incident of bullying between a learner who is black and others who are white constitute racism necessarily. Bullying in all its forms is unacceptable, absolutely right. But this incident, there were some facts that are not being properly distributed by the EFF. There were 3 actual incidents that are being investigated by the SGB of the school. Firstly, an altercation between the victim in the video and another learner, allegedly over a packet of chips, which was not caught on camera. Secondly, alleged theft of the victim's phone. And thirdly, the physical altercation outside the school, as caught on camera. 4 learners are involved, 3 are facing disciplinary action, and the school has dealt with the matter absolutely appropriately and extremely effectively, much to the EFF's disappointment, because they're trying extremely hard to make it into a racist incident, to try yet again to continue to divide people and call for people to be hung, drawn and quartered for not doing what they believe they should have done. But the school has been exemplary in its actions in this matter, and I just need to put that on record. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Minister Schaefer. Any further ministers wanting to respond? I don't see any hands. Last chance. Right. Thank you. I assume that that's a no. Thank you. That will bring us to the end of member statements. We now move over to notices of motion in terms of Rule 151. All notices of motion by members are required to be delivered to the Secretary for placing it on the order paper. These have been duly submitted and published on the order paper below the line. We now move to motions without notice, and I just want to recap, as we've had a long break, to inform you that in terms of the new standing rule of 150 pertaining to motions without notice, condolences and congratulatory were submitted to the Programming Authority prior to this plenary on the 10th of August 2021. Members are reminded the motions without notice pertaining to congratulatory and condolence will not be allowed in the sitting as they have not been processed by the Programming Authority. So I've been informed that in the Programming Authority meeting, political parties did submit the names of the honourable members in the desired order of speaking and who had wished to move a motion without notice in the sitting of the House. I will therefore, for noting and for the purpose of the minutes, call out the honourable members whose names have accordingly been submitted and approved. As follows: Honourable Mackenzie, Honourable Brinkcase, Honourable Mackenzie, Honourable Dugmore, Honourable Bartman, Honourable Windvogel, Honourable Mackenzie, Honourable Kama, Honourable Mackenzie, Honourable Mimbi, Honourable Sayed, Honourable Bartman, Honourable Baku Force, Honourable Bartman, Honourable Philander, and Honourable Allen. I now put the motions duly submitted and approved by the Programming Authority to the House. Are there any objections? No. No objections. No objections. Agreed to. The motions will appear in the minutes of the proceeding and in Hansard in each individual member's names as if that member had read them out aloud. I will now afford the opportunity to members to move motions without notice as per the standing rule of 152D. This could also include motions without notice that were not approved in the Programming Authority meeting. Members are reminded that 30 minutes as per standing rule will start now. I recognise, and honourable members, I do have the list, so please don't put in new motions. I now recognise Honourable Baku Force.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
You may proceed. Honourable Baku Force.
Can you hear me, Deputy Speaker?
Are you reading? Yes, are you going to read without notice?
Yes.
Over to you.
I move motion without notice that the House recognizes the hundreds of thousands of people who still struggle as this provincial government continues to fail them, such as the homeless people who hide under the cardboards and bridges and the cold and wet season batters against them, vulnerable people who are still being evicted from farms and open land, despite restrictions of or laws and court interventions. Cases such as the recent of one in Somerset West, where Clara Phillips, who is 84 years old, lived on a farm since she was years old, but on a break of appeals to stay in that house with her son living with a disability. I so move.
Thank you. Honourable Member, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
No.
There are objections. The motion will be
No objections.
noted. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I now recognise Honourable Makamba Botia.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes the conduct of Western Cape Department of Human Settlements in human conduct through the introduction of the so-called Better Living Challenge project. Instead of the department fast-tracking the provisions of housing and reducing the housing backlog, they are busy mocking the poor of this province by initiating to teach them how to build better shacks. This is nothing but a desperate attempt by the DA-led provincial department in thinking that the masses will fall for this desperate and poor electioneering trap. Their government has already proved that they are incapable of addressing the provision of housing in the province. This House must condemn this move by the department in the strongest of terms. I so move.
Object. Are there any objections?
No
Thank you.
objection. No objection.
There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I now
objections.
recognise Honourable Sayed.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that this House objects to the African Union Commission for granting observer status to the apartheid state of Israel that brutally oppresses Palestinians by bombing and killing them in the occupied territories, and that this House supports the stance taken by the South African government and other African countries in this regard. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Objection.
Moved without notice.
No objection.
But nothing to do with us.
Of course,
Noted.
it's expected from the DA and the ACDP.
Everything to do with
the DA. Apartheid Zionist apology.
Honourable members, I haven't finished speaking. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I note the objections. Honourable Klejo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House condemn the move by the Democratic Alliance-led City of Cape Town in drafting an illegal document disguised by as a bylaw entitled the City of Cape Town Unlawful Occupation Bylaw. In its current format, this illegal draft document, which can never pass in any constitutional muster, seeks to criminalize land occupiers by arresting them without any warrant. This move by the city is not only illegal, but also total contradiction of various provisions of the South African Constitution, together with the purpose of sought to be achieved by the legislation. The move by the city entrenches the long-standing notion that the DA-led government will stop at nothing to attempt to brutalize the poor. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved?
Object.
There are objections.
No
Noted.
objections. No objections.
Objected. Noted. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I now recognise Honourable Mimbi.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I rise on a motion without notice that the House call on the provincial government to stop all sales and leases of state or public land or housing until a full land audit has been completed and submitted to the legislature together with a proper policy on the renting and or sale of such land. I so move, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion be moved without notice?
No objection.
Absolutely.
No objection. We're not
The
surprised
objection
yet
the
again.
motion will be printed
Time to protect
on the
privilege.
honourable members. Order. So just for the record, the motion will be printed on the order paper. I now recognise Honourable Clerho.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House note and condemn the continued taxi violence in the province, which continues to claim more lives and almost on a daily basis. This follows the incident that took place yesterday in Citrusdal in the West Coast, where 2 people were shot dead inside a taxi. More than 88 people died this year alone since the beginning of this taxi violence. All this has rendered the Department of Transport and that of Safety in the province to be lacking leadership as they remain dysfunctional at their best. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion been moved without notice? Objections?
No objections.
Will be
They are missing
printed on the
Bongi.
order paper. Noted. Thank you. Honourable Bakabakafos. You there, honourable member? I'm going to move on. I now recognise Honourable Makamba Botia.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes and condemn the continued scourge of gender-based violence pandemic, which continues to show its ugly head in this province and the country at large. This follows the recent gruesome incident where a woman's body was found dumped in Brown's Farm in Philippi on Women's Day. It has now shown time and again that our authorities remain reactionary on issues relating to gender-based incidents, and the perpetrators continue with their evil deeds without any conscience on their part. As the EFF, we call for those in government to focus their resources more on the human behavioral aspects. All we need now is a change in behavior from the perpetrators of these deeds and for the future generation not to follow these evil deeds. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion been moved without notice? No objections? Agreed to. I have one last call to our Honourable Bakabakafos. No. All right. Thank you very much. That concludes the business for the day. And that concludes motions without notice. The Secretary will now end the meeting and all members will be exited from the meeting. Thank you very much, Honourable members. The House is adjourned.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy
Yes,
Speaker.
for Speaker.
Bye, corrupt ANC. Bye.